CIA or you don't trust like our institutions, then what do you trust? Wait, so if you don't trust the CIA or you don't trust like our institutions, then what do you trust?
The last track, I think I only blinked once. I skipped lunch. Blinked twice. Christ, shut your eyes. Now open wide. Fascists took the nation and inflation took a supersize. It's sad to say your teachers couldn't quite make the ends collide. But now you'll probably get to see them on the weekends doing Uber drives. Say lube it with a little oil. One, it tastes expensive too. You'd be surprised how well it helps you open up your throat so you consume the lie of human rights that was sold to you by suits and ties, designer scents on plastic men with patient fangs and ancient vice. You know, the kind of greed that makes a person lose the sight of morals, so it's easier to sleep at night. It's easier to ease their minds and pick a foreign people we could demonize. If you take a sec to sink into how war criminals think, you'll know you'd never want to see inside. If every man's an open book to look within, theirs are bound in human skin and not designed for human eyes. They are wearing human skin, but they can simply not be humanized. They aren't worth the lowest of the poor, they swore to crucify. Holy sweet Geneva, there's a mass grave full of dead believers you called the police on cause you don't believe in squatters' rights. You believe the sanctity of human life is relative to human worth in terms of work and dollar signs. So listen when I say you need to find the light of day before it's too late to apologize. Like holy sweet Geneva, here's a mass grave you can colonize. Because you seem to love to talk about the spirit of America. But if you saw the spirit of this land's supposed character, I think that you'd be calling ICE. And I also think the actual America is truly represented by the call to ICE. Is represented best by the descendants of some immigrants bitching about the immigrants, snitching on some immigrants, then playing dumb and innocent like good little Christians when their neighbors get deported. Until they're screaming at the store that they waited 20 minutes more because the staff was short. Because some ordinary bigot started waging war on immigrants. And honey, we'll just keep deporting because like your first vote and each election since, it turned out that the man you are supporting ended up to just be twice the fucking bigot as the bigot that he wins against. But I was not among the herd. A single word from Biden stirred a tingle in the cynic sense. I knew that a vote for Joe was more like Reagan 2.0. I could smell that sarin smoke that choked around the river bend, and so I spoke about a living end, about an anchor thrown to drowning men, a democratic president, a country never found again. A man who marinated in the blood this land was founded in, a crime bill that contains sufficient lethal ends to drown us in. All written by a man who wears a crown of sins, who currently is sleeping in a bed of sins. And it's no wonder those who truly understand the meaning of democracy are not too keen to let us in. It's no wonder other countries can't conceive of skipping meals or missing rent or being on the streets because you can't afford your medicine. That's uniquely American. And Joe has proved to be the most disturbingly American of presidents. I shiver when I think of what's to come if he's the precedent. It's a wonder I can even function still to process all the rhymes through all the resonance. Bless my heart, I'm liminally reticent, standing on a threshold of bone, ash, and sediment, near a faded marker claiming this to be the grave of all my sentiments, exactly where I left them all and just how I remembered it. It's a wonder I can even function still to process all the rhymes through all the resonance. Bless my heart, I'm liminally reticent, standing on a threshold of bone, ash, and sediment, near a faded marker claiming this to be the grave of all my sentiments, exactly where I left them all, and just how I remembered it.
Wait, so if you don't trust the CIA or you don't trust like our institutions, then what do you trust? Wait, so if you don't trust the CIA or you don't trust like our institutions, then what do you trust?
Fuck.
trust the CIA or you don't trust like our institutions, then what do you trust?
Maybe that's how it goes. We won't open our eyes, so we're the last ones to know. We're the last ones alive, kept our enemies close, wondered why we don't thrive.
Speakers.
While we're grasping at ghosts, counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5.
Count back from 5. The theater on fire, the cast on strike. The studio stock starts taking a dive. The contracts tossed and they're gone with the tide. And the heads and execs, their hands are tied. We can't pump this dreck and treat you right. But what do you expect from the industry type who survive by the leeching of bodies and minds? From those who original thoughts never seem to find. So they're gonna reboot ALF before your wages rise. And it gives cause to pause and reflect on the times. If they're losing control of their fools and their mimes, when all those obedient actors who grew their careers by averting their eyes are now holding the line, along with the authors of countless scripts that strengthen the hand of that corporate grip, squeezing our throats till we take the pen and we accept and consent to the corporate drip. Till you're all up to date on your pharma du jour, till you got a healthy support for the war on your lips. And now you know that the advertisers need more than a rerun summer full of flashback clips. Enter the scans from the year before, all the days of de-aging and mapping the face, and the hours of actors recording their voices are links in the chains that will bind them in place. Now all of those shows are so easy to make. When they got a drone they control that needs no break, it can bend, it can break, and it's cheaply replaced enough up-to-date films all in one take. And those studios bank on us doing our duty, unhinging our jaws and digesting the fakes. Cause they know that we'll love how synthetic it tastes. Watch as they edit your features without any trace. Not that there's anything you could do anyway. Now watch as they show you a movie you saying shit you would never say. Dystopia boldly accelerates. Maybe you're only a mold, something to fill with a clone, something that Elon would celebrate. Something they own, something they program and code, something that's woefully able to know it's exanimate. Cause it doesn't feel touch over top of the laminate. You will not feel an emotion, but they will not scan and examine it. You and the other consumer contaminants fed on the federal diet of Kiev, Havana, and Tiananmen. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment. I can't be the only one weighing the pros of abandonment.
Where did you think we'd go? Love, there's nowhere to lie. Guess it's not who you know, more it's what you can hide. Like we're chained to the floor, they're streaming us live while we're watching the war, counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards from 5. Counting backwards.
Just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good?
And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously,
No.
we're fucked. We are
Right.
fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, you. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
And as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Ian?
Cheers and salutations. Welcome if you got them.
But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
No. The issues that we talk about, listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
INN News.
What? What? Sorry. Huh?
It is Wednesday, my dudes.
There we go.
Yay, we did it.
Wait.
I just cut it off.
Cut out halfway, and then it cut
because
out in the
because I didn't
beginning.
press the other buttons, and then I pressed the button again to get the first half. You know what I'm saying? We just gotta make we gotta duct tape stuff together around here, Care Bear. That's what we do. All right. I played
Sounds
it.
like you just messed up.
It's possible. It's possible that I just messed up. It's possible. That is a thing. Well, it's INN News, the show where we mess up sometimes. With me as always, my co-host as always, Collin Radix-Carter, aka Care Bear. Care Bear, how are you doing? You doing all right? Hopefully the pollen hasn't completely killed you. You know?
Not quite, but I've been taking my allergy medicine for the last couple of weeks now.
Yeah.
So that's been helping, but I might have some issue with this eye. So I checked it, just as an aside, I checked it when I had my eye appointment a couple weeks ago. The eye doctor said my eyes are out of alignment.
Okay.
Not sure entirely what that means.
We gotta get your eyes balanced. You know, put a couple of little wheel weights on there.
Yeah, but I have noticed this eye has been not painful, but kind of sore. And I'm wondering if it's due to screens. So we're just playing so much, So so I do have to go back. I do have to go back in for I do have to go back in like next week to double check stuff. But I'm hoping it's something that can be dealt with if it's, and hopefully a minor issue. Like, because I'm kind of like, do I need potential surgery?
We'll just take that one out, put a new one in. Should be fine. You know.
I mean, I'd rather not have surgery.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology. You'll be the $8 million man, but you'll have to pay for it all out of pocket. With the system we have, that would be a great redo. He's got to pay back all the debt from being the $8 million man. That's how that show works now.
I don't even think a lot of people in the audience know what
I'm talking about.
And probably you too, because you're not that generation.
Just barely. I know of it. I think I've seen like an episode or two. But we brought stories. So
yeah, not. Well, I wouldn't say typical. This is typical for us, but kind of slice of life-ish type stories that we kind of do a lot. But our first story tonight that I brought, so this past weekend was Eid. So basically, as I told Reef, as a Westerner, basically the easiest way I could say it is like the Muslim version of Easter, or the Muslim version of Passover for Jewish folks. So basically, Eid is a time for the Muslim community. That's their fasting / preparation time, like kind of what Catholics would do during Lent / Easter, which will be coming up in a couple of weeks.
Right.
So we are going to talk about that, but we're going to relate that back to Gaza, how obviously, should be a time of celebration, but instead it's not.
Yeah.
So we're going to drive that point home.
I heard you get to get back to marital relations during Eid. So good for them, That's going to be the best thing to get back. Fuck the food, the other shit. That's what you want. But anyway, what else do you bring?
That will be our first story. And then later on tonight, we haven't talked about like the Arab community not much, if at all. But we're going to feature an article, I believe, by Alan McLeod.
Ramsey Brood.
Ramsey, yep.
Yep.
Who talks about the Arab world's complicity in the
Probably
lack of response.
Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Egypt.
Yep.
The
all
classics.
All of that.
Israel supporting in the Middle East. So,
So we're gonna go into that a little bit.
Yep.
And much later tonight, we do have an extra story. This is kind of breaking. So today, for those of you who don't know, is Liberation Day, according to Trump.
Okay. Whatever that means.
This has been, so Trump released his tariffs, which he's been mentioning for a while. He was what he was going to do. So apparently they're going to be implemented tomorrow, I guess. So what that means for us is things are going to be a shit ton more expensive than they are right now. So we'll get into that much later tonight as our extra story. And then what did you bring?
Well, I brought a couple of articles from the Electronic Intifada Indie Media Award honoree. But I wanted to speak because I don't think we've touched on it in other segments for sure, right? But just the active starvation of the Palestinians as form of siege warfare. So I brought a bit on that. So we'll cover that. And I brought an article from friend of the show, Brett Wilkins, over at Common Dreams. And he wrote about all the latest atrocities Israel has been committing in its long list of war crimes and atrocities. So, I think he titled it something like Every Atrocity Imaginable, and he's not wrong. So we'll get into that. There'll be some trigger warnings before that, unfortunately. So if you're sensitive to that, I'll warn you, and you're welcome to step out. But, especially if any of those R words are difficult for you to hear. But we'll get through that. But that's what I brought. So, another week of Israeli war crimes. Yay. Fucking depressing as all get out. Anyway, you ready to get started? I'm ready.
But before we do that, shout out to all of the people in the chat. Thank you guys for being here. Most of you are probably fam. If there's any new folks, welcome. Glad you're here. As you may or may not know, YouTube hates us because we report on stories that are not favorable to the algorithm. So therefore, they demonetized us and suppressed us to the bowels of the algorithm. So in order for us to compensate for that, in order for mostly to pay for the stuff, the programming that we need to use behind the scenes in order to produce shows like these and then others on the network. If you would like to support us in that way, just being very transparent, you can, if you have a smartphone, you can scan the QR code that you see at your screen, or you can go to the link that you see at the bottom of your screen there, and Reef is pulling up the code as well on the screen. If you're in the YouTube chat, if you forgot the link, you can type in !donate, all one word. The link will pop up, and you can go to the Ko-fi link directly, and you can give anything as low as $1, but any bit helps. We also have CashApp, Substack, and PayPal accounts if you want to give that way. The links are in the description. As we tell people every week, obviously if you do give, that's great, but we want you to make sure you take care of yourselves, your families, your neighbors first, especially now, more so. Definitely take care of yourselves first. But if you have any extra that you want to give to us as a way to help us continue to do the show, we will appreciate you. And once you do give, regardless of how much you give, you end up on our wall of fame. And we've been growing, and a lot of you have been giving consistently, which has really been helping us. So we're able to pay for a lot of the program that we use for the year, or hopefully we should be current on that by within the next month or so. And then we should be able to invest back into the network in terms of helping, our other colleagues get equipment, being able to, hopefully, ideally, give money to different organizations or whatever. So so hopefully we'll be able to do that more consistently, so that we don't have to worry about that as much and pay out of our own pockets. So, but we really do thank you guys. You really have come through for us over the past few years, and we appreciate you. We love you, and yeah, thanks, fam.
I said thank you very much.
Right. To our first story, Boy Wonder.
Yes. So as I said earlier, those of you who may not know, right, this past weekend was Eid. You're probably wondering what is Eid. So, we are aware that many of you might not know what it is. The easiest way, as I can describe it to you, think of it as like the Muslim version of Easter. For those of you who celebrate or are adjacent to that in the Christian faith, or Passover in the Jewish faith. So basically, this is the Muslim time of, of reflection and repentance in preparation.
End of Ramadan specifically, right? So,
right. So it's kind of like how,
like Mardi Gras, but after Lent. So
I would theoretically, it's like Lent. It is like Lent.
Well,
in that regard. Probably
Ramadan would be, end would be the
Ramadan,
ending of the fasting and the charity and the, all that jazz.
Right. So in prepping for this segment, Reef was like, I don't know a lot about Eid, and I don't think a lot of our audience would neither. So,
no.
And I said, you're right. So we're actually going to go into that now, just kind of giving you a description of what Eid is. And who better than to tell you what Eid is by a bunch of kids?
Yay!
So I'm always a fan of students advocating for themselves and advocating, like different things in terms of learning more about their world. So they will tell you more about Eid and Ramadan and the significance of it. So here.
Hi BTN, my name is Joseph. And I'm Afsa. I'm Faisal. And I'm Khadija. Today we're going to be teaching you about Ramadan and Eid. Ramadan is a special time in the Islamic calendar. Islam is the world's second largest religion with 1.8 billion followers around the globe. Those who follow Islam are called Muslims. There are 5 pillars of Islam, which are rules Muslims follow. They are trusting and understanding the Shahada, or the declaration of faith. Prayer 5 times a day. Giving money to charity.
Participating in Hajj at least once in your lifetime, which is a pilgrimage to a place called Mecca.
And fasting during the holy month of Ramadan.
Ramadan is a month in Islam where people from all around the world fast for a whole month.
Of course, having no food or water for a whole month is impossible. Actually, we have a meal before dawn. It is called sahur.
Iftar.
So we can get ready to fast.
And then after a long day of fasting, we share a evening meal, which is called iftar.
When I first started, it was very hard, but then like a couple of days after, it got very easy because I obviously got more patient and I got stronger.
The hardest bit in Ramadan is when people eat in front of your face, like your siblings, and you just feel tempted to eat with them, like those delicious food that your parents are cooking for your little siblings, and you just have to stay strong.
But it is meant to be challenging, and it is really important for the Muslim community. Of course, not everyone has to fast. People who are sick, pregnant, elderly, or young don't have to take part of it.
During Ramadan, it's important for us to focus on stuff like praying, or reading our religious book called Quran, and also helping those in need.
When the month wraps up, we celebrate with a big party called Eid. The best part about Eid is enjoying the reward for all the hard work during Ramadan. We go and pray in the morning, and then after that we eat some food, talk about how it was, and yeah, we just have fun.
And of course, there's plenty of sweets.
My favorite thing about Eid is receiving gifts and giving them back to the little kids.
The thing that I really like about Eid is when you meet your relatives and friends that you didn't meet in a long time because they live far away.
It's not just for Muslims either. There are big celebrations all over the world and everyone is invited.
Goat!
Thanks for letting us teach you about our religion.
Right, back to you, Amelia. Bye!
Bye-bye! Bye-bye!
So that's
Yay.
Eid and Ramadan. So as they said, it's a month that they fast. And shout out to those kids I know just personally. Obviously, if you're young, you're not required to, but I know some students at my school did. So we had to make accommodations for them, during lunchtime so that they're not tempted or feeling hungry while, everyone else is eating. So yeah, just giving you guys a little quick info regarding Ramadan and Eid. So this is, as I said, this is what was celebrated. Eid was celebrated this past weekend, and what their fasting period for the past month. So now that you know about Eid and Ramadan, we're going to get a little more, unfortunately, diabolical in terms of shifting that over to Gaza. You brought this clip from the Quds News Network. So this is children who are celebrating Eid in Gaza over this past weekend, I guess. So if you want to play this.
Nice. Yay, music that probably is hopefully not copyright. But yeah, I mean, it's just a shame that this is how they have to celebrate, when there's like not much to celebrate there,
Right. Well, you brought this up.
Nope. This one?
Yeah. So you brought this up on Twitter where you said, what do you say when F Israel isn't enough? So you retweeted this from Gaza Medic Voices.
Yeah.
Where a volunteer doctor, I guess this looks like Instagram.
Yeah.
Who said, spent the entire morning and afternoon cutting brand new Eid clothes off dead children. So
shout out to the medical staffs that have been diligently working over there,
Right.
So
as I said, this is should be a time of celebration for the Muslim community, but especially in Gaza, what's happening right now, given that the ceasefire ended, it's really hard to celebrate right now. So this is a news report from WION. They're going to report on the reality of what's happening in Gaza right now during what should be a celebratory time. So go ahead.
Now, thousands of Gazans are preparing to celebrate Eid al-Fitr under the shadow of ongoing war for the second consecutive year. The Israeli military resumed its aerial bombardment of Gaza on March 18th following a nearly 2-month truce, resulting in significant casualties. And according to Gaza's Hamas-run health ministry, at least 921 people have been killed since the resumption of hostilities. The overall death toll in Gaza has risen over 50,000.
We now live in the unknown soldier area, City Square in Gaza City. Before the war, we used to come here to play and buy clothes, but now the place has been destroyed by tanks and missiles, leaving behind huge craters. The entire square has turned into war debris. The area is in ruins, and there is nothing left. Before the war, we would come here to buy clothes and necessities.
And the mood in Gaza is somber as families grapple with loss and displacement. Many are living in makeshift tents and struggling to find joy in what is traditionally a festive time marking the end of Ramzan. The streets, usually vibrant with decorations and bustling markets, are eerily quiet, showcasing the devastation wrought by the ongoing violence. Meanwhile, displaced women in Jabalia are attempting to maintain some semblance of tradition by making cookies for Eid.
We wanted to make the children happy on Eid by baking cookies. Even though we don't have a home and we are living in a tent and our circumstances are difficult, but we want to make the children happy.
The economic situation in Gaza is dire. The Palestinian Authority is unable to pay salaries to its employees due to Israel withholding tax revenue since 2019. This financial strain has severely impacted local markets ahead of Eid, traditionally a peak shopping season. Now, with soaring prices and limited access to goods due to the blockade, many families are prioritizing survival over celebration. Reports indicate that food prices have skyrocketed by more than 100 times due to border closures.
I did not buy anything for myself, my sons or my daughters, because the situation we are going through is very difficult. People in this period of Eid usually buy clothes, they buy sweets, they buy cakes, they buy mamul type of pastry, and enjoy themselves. But this holiday there is nothing. Our situation is difficult. Our circumstances are difficult.
Israel has cut off all food, fuel, medicine, and other supplies to Gaza's roughly 2 million people. The United Nations has reported that no humanitarian aid has entered Gaza for over 3 weeks, marking the longest stretch without assistance since the conflict escalated.
Which no one's talking about, but we're going to in segments in future.
Now, thousands of Gazans are preparing.
No. Next. There you go.
So, just to bring it down a little bit, going to speak on the reality of what's happening. Well, you saw it, but this is an op-ed written by Shahad Alil from Truthout, where he writes, "This Eid was supposed to be a moment of respite, not another day of mourning. Last Eid in Gaza was overshadowed by destruction, heavy bombardment, and bloodshed. I hoped this Eid wouldn't be too." So he writes, Eid al-Fitr, which marks the end of Ramadan, was once eagerly awaited in Gaza, a rare occasion that brought a sense of joy and normalcy. Its preparations began days in advance. Homes were cleaned, a fresh touch of decoration was added, and families made sure everything was in place for the celebration. Parents saved up to buy new clothes for their children, knowing how much it meant to them to dress well on Eid. The streets stayed lively late into the night, filled with people shopping for last-minute essentials. Bakers worked tirelessly, filling the air with the sedza ka'al, the traditional date-stuffed cookies, alongside trays of chocolate and vanilla biscuits, simple treats that would soon be shared over coffee with guests. Shops displayed an array of high-quality chocolates, candies, halkoum, Turkish delight, and roasted nuts, small luxuries that made Eid feel complete.
Yeah. Which dates in and of themselves, they're like they're normally not put in stuff. Like they are, but like that's special to do because dates are already pretty fantastic. You know? So, but continue.
On the first morning of Eid, we would wake up early, dress in our best clothes, and make way to the mosque for the Eid prayer. There, we exchange greetings, smiles, and handshakes, a heartfelt tradition that carried deep meaning, reminding us that Eid is about togetherness. The Takbirat, the chants of Allahu Kabar, recited on Eid, filled the air, creating a familiar rhythm that made the day feel different, wrapped in a quiet sense of spiritual peace. After the Eid prayer, we would head home to prepare breakfast. Breakfast was always special, made exclusively for Eid al-Kafir. It included fakish, hashish, a fermented, salted, and dry fish with a bony, rolled, briny flavor, along with salad dressed in tahini sauce and tomatoes fried in olive oil.
So
People
like
in Gaza
saltfish.
eagerly awaited Eid. Yeah.
But also fermented. So like more like anchovies, I would bet.
Probably.
Yeah. Something like that. Depends on
people
how
in Gaza
fermented.
eagerly awaited
You know.
Eid al-Kafir, especially for this breakfast, rich with diverse flavors. What made this breakfast even more special was the gathering of families around the table where we would laugh, share stories, and savor every bite together. There we go. Then came the time to select and dress in special clothes for Eid, preparing to welcome arriving guests, including relatives and friends who came to share in this joyful occasion. Children loved this part the most. You could see little girls in colorful dresses, their hair adorned with bright accessories, and boys in suit and ties applying perfume. Their new outfits brought an extra spark of happiness to their faces as they eagerly headed out with their edijah, gift money, to buy delicious snacks and toys from the market. Despite the strict siege imposed on Gaza for over 15 years, we continue to find simple ways to enjoy such a special occasion. However, the Israeli occupation hadn't even made the slightest attempt to create a fleeting sense of happiness in Gaza, a luxury we can no longer afford. Last Eid came amid war and starvation, stripping us of our cherished Eid traditions. We had no chance to bake ka'al, savor the taste of chocolate, or prepare the beloved Eid breakfast we once enjoyed along with our loved ones. Last Eid felt empty, as many had lost their homes and their loved ones, the very ones who made Eids meaningful. Personally, I lost my mother due to the Israeli military invasion of Al-Qaidun neighborhood, and my grandmother to starvation and a lack of medical care. I still remember how my family and I were forced to evacuate under heavy bombardment just a few days before Eid, ending up in a UN school turned shelter for displaced families. We carry deep sadness and despair in our hearts, reminiscing about the beauty of Eid in times of peace when we were surrounded by our loved ones. Children didn't wear new, elegant clothes for Eid, nor did they enjoy buying toys and sweets. In fact, some were terrified of going out because of the Israeli bombardment, while others were busy filling their water gallons or getting food from charity kitchens. My 7-year-old cousin, Hanin, cried a lot as the Israeli forces burned all her colorful fluffy dresses, the ones she loved to wear on Eid, during a military operation in Al-Qaidun neighborhood. I don't have any beautiful clothes for Eid. I don't love Eid anymore, she said. Last Eid lost its joy, overshadowed by destruction, heavy bombardment, and bloodshed. However, with the ceasefire taking effect in January 2025, people in Gaza clung to the hope that the war would not return. They held onto the belief that the ceasefire would last, offering them a chance to revive some of the Eid pleasures they had been deprived of for so long. Some even began planning for things they hoped to do on this Eid. However, our simple plans to live in peace and revive some of the Eid traditions we love was shattered by the unannounced heavy bombardment on March 18th. The ceasefire, which had given us a fleeting chance to dream and plan amid the pain and suffering, has ended, and the war has returned. The people in Gaza are now living in a state of shock and fear. We've had enough of wars. Even now, it is hard to believe that this Eid, the one we clung to, eagerly awaited and planned for, will be just like the previous one. Most people have forgotten their Eid plans, consumed by worry about what they will do if they were forced to evacuate to the south again, how they will survive if their stored food runs out, and what will happen if the blockade that prevents humanitarian aid from entering the Strip continues. The thought of reliving the horrors of the past 15 months erases their excitement for this Eid. So to conclude, oh wait, did I? Oh, I missed.
Yeah, you skipped one. If you want to head back one.
Yeah.
There it is.
This Eid was supposed to be a moment of respite, a chance to reclaim even the smallest fragment of happiness. Instead, it has become another day of mourning, another day that in Gaza, not even our dreams are safe. So to end, you got this for me from Alon Mizrahi,
yep,
who tweeted, "I want to curse with all my might the people who will not even try to save these beautiful kids from bombings and starvation, to not harm their careers or public image." So just wanted to share that, just to kind of bring it the reality of, you know, by extension, probably the Muslim community who are feeling away.
Yep.
Even they might be in a safe place in this country.
Well, and like,
that they're able to celebrate Eid, but thinking
you've
about
got Syria right now too, going through the same stuff. You've got parts of Lebanon, and there's a whole group of Islamic countries that are feeling the hurt through their holidays. So
so yeah, just wanted to bring that reality home, that this is what many of your neighbors are struggling with. While if they're here, they're relatively safe, but the reminder that certain members in their community are not able to celebrate this special time because they're more worried about surviving rather than celebrating. And especially given the last year and a half, there's a lot of heavy hearts going on. So especially if you know people who have been affected by this assault in Gaza, I would ask that you check in, tend to them, see how you can help or support, and then in the spirit of Eid, try and give back to your neighbors or take care of them as best as you can.
Agreed. Ugh. Come on, do the thing. There it is.
And talking about stories like this is why we are demonetized. So if you want to help us continue to talk about stories such as these, you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen if you're using a smartphone, or you can go to the link that you see at the bottom of the screen there. If you're in the YouTube chat, you can type in !donate, all one word, and then the link will pop up and you will be directed to our Ko-fi page, where you're able to give as little as $1 towards the network and the show. We know a lot of you are struggling right now, so the best and the free way, if you want to support us in order to continue talking about stories like these, is word of mouth. So we ask that you like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. YouTube does some shenanigans where sometimes they kick off our subscriber base, so check to make sure you're subscribed so you're able to be notified of when we go live or when we have clips that we upload. And yeah, help us get to, I say 5K, but 3K, and we've been doing very well. You guys have really been subscribing, and our numbers have been growing in spite of the suppression. And thanks for watching.
Yeah, we did it. All right, to the chats. Got some people over at Rumble. Said they had the Steve Austin action doll with the bionic eye. Back to the $6 million man conversation. I think I said 8 million though. Like that's what it's inflation, right? It'd be like $10 million man now, right?
Sure.
So Popeye in chat saying Beauty and the Boomer in 20 minutes. Go tell them we said hey when you head over and give them some likes. Sean the Accord Lord says fuck is not real, and also adds that dates are amazing. They are pretty fantastic, I have to admit. The Majul ones especially. Real good. There was like a thing I saw that sent you like a date of the week, like a date of the month club. It would just send you dates from different places. Like they are drastically different fruits for some reason. You know, like packed with sugary goodness. But anyway, you must have got given some good ones when you were over in, what was it, Morocco? You headed over there?
Don't remember eating. Actually, I don't remember eating dates when I was over there. To be honest with you, I'm not a fan of dates anyway. Sorry.
Yeah, they're so good, dude. I don't care. They're just good. They're like the best fruit. You know. So I mean, what dried fruit, man? There's something about it. Dried mangoes. You know, all that good stuff. Dried pineapple. I could just eat my weight in those. Thank you very much. And then regret it later. But anyway, and people just saying, you know, Friday nights on ABC, I watched it live, says Popeye. People really dug the $6 Million Man reference. Feel good about that. I mean, my people are here, you know? So they have to be redoing that. With everything they're redoing, you know, they already did 90210 and MacGyver.
I think they have.
Probably, you know,
at some point.
Disney probably owns it.
I feel like in the back of my memory, I feel like they did try to reboot the show within the last decade or so.
Yeah.
But they didn't do so well. If that's true, let us know in the chat.
There's a lot of those shows for that era you just couldn't. I was just thinking, like, they're not gonna remake Good Times suddenly, you know? Like, that's not gonna happen. Like, we're not gonna get Dynamites back. That's not happening. I can see that'd be anyway. Like, I'm just trying to picture what that would look like a modern Good Times, and my brain fails me at what that would be, you know? But I would watch at least an episode to see if it was okay, you know. But anyway, we should get to our next story, which harkens back to your previous story. I feel like, you know, very similar pathways we take when we pull shows. But I wanted to talk about just the siege warfare and starvation Israel has, you know, been using on the Palestinians as weapons for a long time now, not just recently, but we'll get into a bit. So I brought a couple of articles from the Electronic Intifada, this time by Nada Hamdouna on the 26th of March, in case people wanted to, you know the dates and whatnot. But they write about cooking up steadfastness in Gaza. So they write, in Gaza, the struggle for food is more than about satiating hunger. It is a battle for human dignity. Israel has tightened its chokehold on Gaza crossings, preventing the entry of commercial goods and humanitarian aid. The renewed attacks, which have killed hundreds of people over the past week, signal a resumption of the war in which starvation was used as a deadly weapon. Not that the war ever really ended. The struggle to fill our bellies is one that families are still up against, with no reprieve during Ramadan, during which our fasts are traditionally broken by communal meals. So, this is Ramdi Abdul. Check the date on that. October 25th, 2023. Right? So, until now, Israel has bombed 10 bakeries in the Gaza Strip, and he lists all of them here. Right? And also continues, last night, the Israeli occupation planes bombed the only bakery in the Al-Maghasi area, which had been provided with flour hours earlier by UNRWA to supply tens of thousands of camp residents and those displaced there. The missiles completely destroyed the bakery and left a large hole in its place in addition to demolishing a number of surrounding houses, killing 10 Palestinians and wounding others. And this is just in a long list of food-related bombings from Israel. They've bombed supermarkets with people in them. They've, I think it was you who brought them using flour as just traps, just leaving aid out to, essentially like salt lick an area, for lack of better terms. So, I mean, just incredible war crimes all around. But I brought these. This is from the late Hassam Shabat. Not even a drop of water has entered the besieged North Gaza since October 1st. The Israeli government is systematically using starvation as a tool of war. They want to starve the remaining population that wasn't killed by their bombs. The entire Gaza Strip is facing horrific conditions due to cold weather and heavy rainfall. 2 million people are experiencing bombardment, starvation, and displacement as the Israeli government uses collective punishment as a tool against the entire population. And we covered, what was it, 2 weeks ago? The passing of journalists such as Hassam Shabat. So please go check that out, just to remember them and honor them and do all that good stuff. But Vanessa Beeley, friend of the show, Israel is carrying out a policy of starvation and water deprivation in northern Gaza. According to Iyad al-Bassoum, a spokesperson for the Interior Ministry in Gaza, all bakeries in Gaza City and the northern towns are now officially out of service due to lack of fuel and flour. Again, this was November 7th, right? So we've had a long time since then of continued blockade, right? So this is the slow starvation of people reminiscent of, famine. And, you can look back to Poland during the wars, all that stuff where this exact kind of stuff was happening. So, not great, but to continue, finding new ways to prepare family dishes with extremely limited ingredients is one means by which people are resisting. They improvise on recipes by using canned instead of fresh meats or onion and garlic powder when the vegetables, basic ingredients in our cuisine, are nowhere to be found. With sugar expensive and scarce, people turn to honey or date molasses received by some families in aid packages to create dishes that satisfy their bodies and ease their psychological pain. And that's when Israel isn't killing the aid when it comes. So that's also a thing, if we remember correctly, with UNRWA and what was the Jose Andres organization that was there? World Kitchen, something like that?
World Central Kitchen.
That's
World
it.
Central Kitchen.
So traditionally, staple food in our cuisine, fish has been extremely difficult to obtain because of the siege on Gaza's coastal waters that is enforced by lethal fire by the Israeli Navy. My father, who knows that it is my favorite food, looks for fish in the market but finds none. Food in Gaza is not merely sustenance. It is a symbol of steadfastness. The kitchen is not just a place for cooking. It is an open arena to protest the harshness imposed by Israel's genocide and severe restrictions which remain ongoing. So, yeah, any thoughts so far, Care Bear?
I mean, I feel like you talk about this a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's one of the things that, right, the entire time.
There's a genocide going on.
Yeah.
And, but the idea that people, well, one, I think you can see at both ends that obviously food is survival right now, but still it's the idea of trying to find pleasure in the food, which you should be doing anyway. It's funny, I had a conversation with one of my families whose child, I think she desires him to eat different food. So she wanted him to have the school lunch.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, school lunch, I would argue, is not the place, especially in this country, to try and expand your culinary palate, so to speak. So I told her, but it's obvious, but due to different things, he doesn't find lunchtime enjoyable. It stresses him out. And what I said to her was, food should be a time of it's pleasure. It should be pleasurable. Like you should be able to sit and enjoy and eat. But it's the experience of being with people that you care about or getting to know. So it's not just the food, it's the company, it's it's so more encompassing than just ramming food in our bodies quickly. And I think here, because we're just such a fast culture in America in general, we don't necessarily take the time to appreciate that. But even in Gaza, even in the midst of war, that they're still looking for ways that they can appreciate, food, not just in terms of survival, but thinking about their families and what they like to eat and trying to accommodate that as best they can or finding an alternative. So just to care, even in the midst of pain, do they take when they cook? I think is amazing, but I think we should be more mindful of that too in our culture, even though we may not be going through all of that.
For sure. I think that's why I brought this, and stories like this I brought before. I think it's like one of those things that Americans easily relate to, right? Like, it kind of is a window into cultures you don't normally get. So, and it's also people are very aware of their own food situations, which, I think it's an easy way to like bridge a gap there. So they mentioned fish and stuff. Keep in mind, this area is literally like beaches and on the coast. So historic fishing communities all over that. But again, the late Hassam Shabbat, who filmed a young boy sitting on a piece of wood who spent hours rowing in the sea, trying to catch fish amid the starvation affecting northern Gaza. So here's just a bit of what that would look like. Imagine children that age here doing anything like that, for food, not just for like enjoyment, like this is because they're hungry. So, so this is what, getting food looks like there. So, and I mean, this is why this journalist is no longer with us, because he puts out stuff like this. So Israel couldn't have anyone actually humanizing these people. So, yeah, I mean, pretty despicable stuff to me. So, and have you ever seen the Anthony Bourdains in Palestine when he was there? Mm-hmm. Those are important watches too. So I might go find that later for us. But he took a ton of, not here. He took a ton of flack for that. So I figured I should mention it. And he felt like I just do what I always did and humanize the people in the region. So, let them tell their own story. But speaking to people in the region, we're going to bring Eva Karine Bartlett on the lesser discussed Israeli starvation and death policies Palestinians in Gaza have been suggested to for 15 years before October 7th, which I know that's more important. So she put this up in July with none other than Eve Engler. So 2 Indie Media Award honorees. So
whereas I'm glad the Lancet put this out, I know they have to be neutral in their wording or whatever, but I disagree that these are indirect deaths. Okay, indirect in the sense they aren't bombs, but Israel has, for when did the siege on Gaza, when was that imposed? 2006, I think, or maybe 2005. I think 2006. So since then, you and I know very well, and probably our listeners too, that Israel has done everything in its possibility and its might to make life unlivable in Gaza and to put Palestinians on a starvation diet. You remember that back in 2008 or 10, they literally said that, and they cut the amount of food aid, UN and other food aid that was allowed into Gaza by a third or half, that Amira Haas, the excellent Israeli journalist that writes at Haaretz, wrote about that back then. So my point that I want to make with the Lancet, not to denigrate them, but just to emphasize indirect in the sense these aren't Israeli bombs or snipings, but direct in the sense this is calculated by Israel. They had the intention to starve and create the conditions of disease and all these other preventable deaths, and they've succeeded in doing so. The even perhaps lesser known to your average reader is the other policies of making it impossible for Palestinians to be food sufficient, self-sufficient, for example, farming or fishing, because the fishers are gunned down when they're a kilometer or two off the coast, whether they're on a hasaka, which is like a, whatever you call those paddle boards that you stand on, and they paddle out and they drop their nets and then pull the fish in later, or if they're actually in a fishing trawler, they're attacked by sniper fire, by shelling, by heavy-powered water cannon that's doused with a chemical that makes them smell like excrement if they're not, otherwise killed by shelling. They're abducted, their boats are stolen. All this stuff has taken away their sea source of food, and then the farmers undergo Israeli sniping on a daily basis just because they're on their land. And Israel says it's 300 meters on the Gaza side. It's all Palestine, but on the Gaza side between the fence and occupied Palestine. But in reality, in my experience, when I lived in Gaza and went with farmers, the Israeli army would fire 500, 600, 700, 800 meters from that fence. And it's a policy of targeted harassment to drive them off their land and to take away their food source, their agricultural basket. And then they also, of course, bulldoze the land, or if the Palestinian farmers manage to grow some crops, then they throw an incendiary device on the crops and burn them. So like this kind of stuff has been going on since I was in Gaza, so like 15 years plus. And they destroyed systematically the wells and cisterns, making it impossible to irrigate the land. So like there's all these things that most people wouldn't know, which then sets up the base for all sorts of like malnutrition, stunting in growth, anemia, all that stuff. The heavy dependence on UN food aid, which is really not very, it's pretty meager. It's not, it doesn't compare to the rich Palestinian diet that they previously had. And by rich, I don't mean luxurious. I mean like the variety of foods they were able to grow, catch, or whatever, produce. Now they, all this diabetes, I'm not a doctor, but my understanding is a lot of it is due to these really drastically, before October 2023, these drastically limited diets that Palestinians exist on. And then the whole 95 or 97% undrinkable water situation, that's been going on since 2010.
97%.
I remember an article or a statement or something by the UN, I think it was 2012, where they said Gaza will be unlivable in 10 years. And at the time I wrote an article, or shortly after, saying it's already unlivable. So these are like, that's what I want to flesh out in my op-ed, because I think it's important people realize not only that, of course, as we always point out, this didn't start in October 2023, but also all these sadistic policies, the destruction of the power plant, not allowing them to rebuild a proper one. So the chronic electricity crisis affecting the hospitals, the chronic crisis of inadequate supplies of medicines, emergency medicines, inadequate hospital supplies and equipment, all that's been going on for very, very long, like again, 15 plus years, 17 years, maybe. That's what I want to flesh out, because I really think people need to understand the indirect deaths are a direct policy from the Israelis top down.
Any questions? No.
Nope.
Shout out Eva Bartlett, friend of the show. Excellent work as always. When she was on, we talked about very similar things. Her times defending Palestinian farmers and the like. So, so that they could harvest and actually make food for themselves to eat. So she mentioned this about them calorie counting Gazans, right? So Seattle Times paper shows Israeli counted calories to limit food in Gaza during the blockade. Al Jazeera, Israel set calorie limit. Right, here's the New York Times saying Israel applied an average daily requirement of 2,279 calories per person. Collin, you've been calorie counting. That's what? Below average generally? 3 is the average, right? I do believe. 3,000. I mean, it's like
adequate
generally, but, depending.
For a man, sure.
Right.
For a man,
Yeah.
I mean, it varies, but I would say on average about I mean, it depends on the person. Yeah, like
Yeah.
around 2,000, is basically 2,000 is what you would burn
Calorie
off.
deficit. Yeah, it's 2,500 is
No, but 2,000 calories on average is what you would just burn off by existing.
Yes.
So it's not like if you're just living, you will burn that off in a day.
Yeah.
So the idea that you're eating about that much a day, but then like with the added stress that you're going through, you're at a constant
burning more
deficit.
Yeah.
More than probably necessary. So you're at a deficit more likely due to the stress.
Plus, as we know, these calories are not like good, balanced macroed like calories because they're not getting the fresh foods and vegetables that they were growing.
Right.
So
honestly, I think that might be a little generous.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. I think that number is a little inflated.
For sure.
Because it's just kind of looking like, we're not that bad. But
yeah.
I would argue that is probably way less than
what they even said. Sure.
More likely, sure. But but again, like 2,000 is about what you just burn off anyway. So the idea that you're eating that at minimum.
Yeah, and that's for like median metabolism too. So
right.
Right. There's plenty of people who would burn way more, per day. So, but
right.
Again, the late Hussam Shabbat, the starvation scenes in northern Gaza are very clear nowadays. As you walk around, you see children and women walking with pots, standing in long lines, hoping to find a meal for the day. The men usually risk their lives going to the fields to find produce or vegetables. When the first wave of famine happened, hundreds of men were killed in the fields while trying to pick food for their families. This is yet another layer of genocide, starving a population to break their will, eventually forcing them to leave and be ethnically cleansed. The Israeli occupation forces know exactly what they are doing. So, one of the greatest challenges faced by Palestinians living in Gaza is exorbitant cost of basic items. Cooking oil has become a luxury good, with families sometimes going months without being able to purchase any. A liter can cost $30 or more, depending on the status of Gaza's crossings and the prices demanded by exploitative traders, forcing people to use it sparingly. So, guess what a 48 fluid ounces of oil here costs, Care Bear? $3.97.
Right.
So that's a little over a liter. Like 10 ounces over. So keep that in mind just to get some perspective. And if that's your oil, one of the most basic food, staples, like you need it for everything, practically, that's ridiculous. So when Ramadan began earlier this month, which was soon followed by Israel's total closure of the crossings, the price of cooking oil spiked once again, and fresh foods such as chicken and meat became prohibitively expensive or unavailable once more. This phase of struggle has been the hardest, with shortages of essentials and prices still sky high, no reconstruction, and our only option to get anywhere is on foot. And now that Israel collapsed the January ceasefire, which didn't last for a full 2 months, there is little relief to be found in Gaza when there is little to be found of much of anything. With meat and chicken currently unavailable, families are resorting to some of the approximations of familiar dishes that have characterized our cuisine during the war. One of these dishes involves chicken or beef mortadella, a processed food product more readily available than fresh meat to prepare alternative recipes mimicking roasted chicken. Known as fake chicken, the dish is prepared by slicing the mortadella into long, thin slices. The strips are seasoned with chicken or shawarma spice blends, salt and black pepper. After that, we coat it with breadcrumbs and deep fry it in oil. I mean, this is just bologna. That's Italian bologna. So nothing like a, homogenized meat. So it's nice and emulsified, Collin, just the way nature intended. The technique is similar to how chicken breasts were commonly prepared before the war with the mortadelle. The result is a dish resembling crispy chicken fingers. So I'm sure that's delicious when not, made out of bologna, like breaded and fried. So anyway, people cook in clay ovens in a displacement camp in Khan Yunis on the 31st of December. This is in the rain. Outdoors on a homemade clay oven, right? So while you throw a Hot Pocket in the microwave, this is how people in Khan Yunis have to cook. The resilience of the Palestinian people is unbreakable. So this is what we've seen since the beginning of this conflict. And mainly the women, by the way. I know the men are also having to go in the fields and dodge bullets. But we've seen hospitals being used because they're the only way to cook food, right? We've seen bread being made in like ORs, like ridiculous. So I got this reply on a tweet. We ask you as free Americans who reject genocide in Gaza to intensify your activity now. 2 million people in Gaza are dying of hunger because of the siege imposed on them by Israeli army. The bakeries that were helping by providing loaves of bread have all closed because of the depletion of all food supplies. The weapon of starvation is more severe, which is literally war crimes, by the way. This is siege warfare. So bread, essential to every meal in our cuisine, disappeared from our plates at a certain point during the war. Early on, Israel bombed Gaza's bakeries and deprived them of electricity, fuel, and flour, a recipe for famine. During the period of no bread and no flour, families who were able to buy the scarce quantities of pasta available on the market, like mine in northern Gaza, would grind the pasta and use the resulting pasta flour to bake bread. So, under famine conditions, the quality of the light but chewy pasta bread loaves, which was neither bad nor good in flavor, was irrelevant, given the lack of alternatives to alleviate our hunger. When some of the bakeries reopened around this time last year, bread became available in Gaza once again. But the bakeries were unable to meet the high demand. Some people were even crushed to death after being trampled in a crowd waiting for bread. With some families are able to buy bread, others make bread at home using flour and yeast and bake the loaves in a clay oven amid the lack of gas and electricity. I would also suggest finding some yeast in the air, building a mother, little sourdough starter, if I were you, would be a smart move, and cherish it with everything. The firewood used to bake in clay ovens, like everything in Gaza, comes at a high price and therefore difficult to obtain. Some families pay a fee to use communal clay ovens to bake their bread. People are making do with whatever is available in the market. Rumania, a savory sauce in Gaza with a rich, tangy flavor, is traditionally made with fresh pomegranate. Because the fruit is difficult to obtain these days, some people have resorted to using jarred pomegranate sauce as a substitute. However, like many other food items, jarred pomegranate sauce is expensive, with 4 ounces costing about $15. But one jar can last for multiple meals and allow us to mark a special occasion and maintain variety in dishes while so many foods remain unavailable. The shortage of meat and poultry in Gaza has led many families to seek alternatives to ensure diverse meals. Among those alternatives, bulgur is an ideal choice. We prepare the chicken by soaking the bulgur in water until it becomes soft. Then we grind it, add spices, and a little bit of breadcrumbs. After that, we mix everything together and shape it into long fingers. We then dip it in flour and water, followed by more breadcrumbs. Finally, we cook the fingers in a deep fryer, giving it the crunchy outer texture and soft inside that is remnant of fried chicken. So,
vegan.
Yes, bulgur wheat. I'm sure that's actually tasty because fried food, you can't go wrong.
Or
really.
I guess more closer to falafel in a way.
Yes, that's what I would think. Right. And like, I'm surprised we're not hearing about that there frequently, because dried chickpeas, I guess they're also not being able to grow the chickpeas, probably.
Chickpeas.
So despite the harsh reality, Go ahead.
Yeah, the land's toxic, so
yes,
that's really safe.
Yeah,
to grow anything there.
Despite the harsh reality, people in Gaza insist that life must go on and that food must remain food regardless of the circumstances. So, yeah. So speaking of bread, right? You know, this is, I brought this because how many of your elected officials have talked about how terrible a thing bread lines are in any capacity, right? You know, just super McCarthyite smears of bread lines. But meanwhile, in reality, we're causing that in Gaza. So this is by Danya Ahmoud Abu Satah, right? She writes, I wake up early and I put on my clothes quietly. It's after dawn and the sky is tinted a soft orange. The sun is not yet fully ablaze and there is a cool breeze. I wonder if it will stay that way, and I hope it will, because waiting in the bread lines for an hour with the sun overhead gives me a headache. I put on my shoes and I hear my mother telling me to hurry up, that we have a long line awaiting us. The walk to Doha Bakery in Khan Yunis takes about 10 minutes. Before the war, I would walk to university and sometimes near the sea, and I enjoyed these walks. But the walk to the bread line to join an immense crowd of people pleading for loaves of bread, that is not the same kind of walk. On the 2nd of March, prices skyrocketed in Gaza when Israel announced that it would close the crossings and stop the entry of all goods, including food, into Gaza. In the weeks that followed, many bakeries shuttered, hanging signs on their doors that read closed due to fuel shortage. The Doha Bakery, which is supported by the World Food Program, was one of the few that remained open. This means it's extra crowded and that we will wait for hours to get a single loaf of bread, which costs about $1. A worker came outside and pushed open the iron fence surrounding the bakery and announced, bread distribution will start at 11 a.m. It was around 10 a.m., still an hour to go. The bakery itself is a medium-sized building with a broken staircase leading to the entrance. Outside is a thumbing generator that keeps the place running. Inside are cracked machines. The building is full of bullet holes and the sun filters through them and the clouds of flour that surround the place. Children climbed onto the fence and peeked through the holes in the doors to watch the bakers prepare the bread. Time crawled slowly. Minutes felt like hours. The sun I had hoped to avoid had finally found us in line. I studied for an exam on my phone, but it was hard to concentrate with all the voices around me. In front of me was a woman in her 50s, with strands of white hair visible through her headscarf. Her hands had been blackened by fire smoke, likely from long hours spent cooking over a fire. She told me how her husband was martyred in December by an Israeli airstrike on Khan Yunis. He'd been sitting with his friends when the house they were in was targeted. They told me your husband was martyred, but I didn't believe them, she said, but then my heart felt it, so I went to Nasser Hospital to ask about him. She said she saw him in the morgue and couldn't stop screaming. She said she yelled at him, "Why did you leave me alone?" She told me the story 3 more times before she got tired of waiting in the bread line and left. Another woman was speaking to her mother. She said she was from Beit Hanun, near the boundary crossing there. They had been displaced from there to Khan Yunis, then to Rafah, and back. Now we're staying in an UNRWA school because our home was demolished. One of my daughters attends school, another fetches water, and the third tidies up the classroom where we are staying. Each day they switch roles, and I come to the bakery trying to adapt to this harsh life. It was now 11 a.m., time for distribution to begin. A worker let the first 10 women and the first 10 men into the bakery. A commotion arose and voices emerged from the crowd. Can you give me bread? I need to leave to prepare food. I can't stand and wait any longer. I have a heart condition. I can't stand in line. I have a baby at home. I need to get back to him. More voices echoed the same desperate pleas, but the bakery won't fit more than 20 people inside. So the worker closed the gates again, and the waiting continued. After about 30 minutes, the same process repeats. Doors open. People plead for bread. Doors close. The bakery doesn't close until 10 minutes before the Maghrib prayer call. around 5:50 p.m. that day. Our term came at around 2:30 p.m. Remember, they were there an hour early. As I received the bread from the baker, I felt nothing. Just the exhaustion of the 6.5 hours we spent waiting. My mother remarked that we were among the lucky few, not only to have bread, but also have it in time to prepare food before iftar, the meal which we break our fast for Ramadan. We left the bakery and the crowds didn't seem to be shrinking. I thanked God that we no longer had to wait. That day was my younger brother's birthday. We planned to make him pizza. We gathered all the ingredients, took the pizzas to the communal clay oven nearby, which costs about $1 for a few minutes. This way of cooking is much more affordable because we don't have gas to power our stove. The price of a few gallons of gas is around $50. We then started lighting the fire to prepare some tea. As the Maghrib prayer was called, we had our meal, and then I went to my computer to complete an exam, the one I had tried to study for online. I took my cup of sage tea, walked to my handmade wooden desk, opened my laptop, and started the exam. It was quite easy. I finished it within half an hour and scored 29 out of 30. I had another cup of tea, went straight to bed, ready to do it all again the next day. Thoughts, Care Bear?
I mean, people will wait in line for Beyonce tickets.
Yeah. Not there.
But no.
Even if things were right, they wouldn't be doing that.
No, you're buying basic need, buying bread, like all day. Which honestly, kind of, not to say it's like this, but it kind of gives like what I experienced when I lived in Africa, like just with more in the sense of the technology that we kind of take for granted, that we're able to do things here so much more faster. It's not necessarily a guarantee over there. And even if you do have it, you know, you may not have the electricity to power it. So, because electricity, you know, in Africa can be pretty fickle. So, you know, so having to do a lot of things by hand, or things taking much longer to do, and depending on what it is, it can take all day. So it's slower, but so add that, but add to the desperation people have in light of getting these things. And it's not, again, these are basic needs. It's not like,
food, water, shelter.
Like when I lived in Uganda, like taking all day to make a pizza because there isn't a Pizza Hut or Domino's, and I'm in the bush, so I have to make that mess from scratch. You know,
that was for Dutchies, right? Where it's like a big insulated bag, right? So you heat the Dutchie as hot as possible, right, with your food in it, and then you put it in the bag. Right, and it like slow cooks in the bag, so that you don't have to use a ton of fuel. And it's literally like a whole charity sending those to like places in Africa, so that we're not using, like, women have to go get firewood all the time to cook constantly, and that would mean less.
Right.
So, but anyway, similar things would be useful here, I imagine. So. Yeah, I mean, definitely a bit rough, especially here in the States, you know, and as tariffs are coming up, food is going to get more expensive here too. But over there, I mean, it's just been, I don't know how any of them are able to like get anything close to a diet able to sustain themselves. So that's, I heard somewhere somebody was talking about that, you know, this will have ramifications for decades, you know, just in health there and overall in the region, not going to be good. So, but anyway, talking about these stories is unfortunately why we're demonetized on YouTube. So if you would like to help us monetarily, you can scan that QR code or go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork. Link, as always, in the doobly-doo. But if you can't give, you know, you know what? Don't listen to just what signs have to tell you. Don't like, don't subscribe, don't share. All right? Don't let me tell you what to do either. Don't leave a comment. Jeez. Anyway, thanks for watching. Or not. No, dude, thanks for watching. We like it very much. All right. Well, do the chat, Scare Bear. What do you got?
A lot of Free Palestine and a lot of Palestine flag emojis.
Yay!
Free Palestine! From the river to the sea!
Yeah.
Vicky Adams in the chat said a couple of things. The kitchen is the center of the home, so of course there is talk. Well,
yep.
It should be, but in our culture, it's usually not the case because we're eating on the run.
Yep.
Or we're living alone, so we're not necessarily eating communally as much anymore. So going along with that, Vicky Adams again, to live on the shore and have no fish.
Dude,
I think that's.
I need to talk to my mother. And I need her to do a thing on just the, you know, historical fishings of that region. That would be an interesting segment to pull together. So I'll look into that. What was it? Eva was talking about a hatouche, whatever. I like that paddleboard. I think I'll have to look into that. That should be interesting. A bunch of trapping, I'm sure, if they're being smart, you know, all that stuff. Food. What's that thing? It's like a, you put like rocks out and you like herd fish into it and close it off. And then you raise like a little group of fish along the shoreline.
I have no idea.
I got to think of what that's called. That's a thing historically, I'm sure. Nets are literally part of the kufias. That's like fishing net pattern on there. So very important part of their culture. So do you know how hard it is to make nets? It's very difficult. I should
I can imagine.
Dude, I should send you like, just got to weave one real quick. Here's a bunch of rope, you know, it's repairing and doing that is a skill in and of itself. So, you know, a lot of little knots to tie, but I think I saw Andy shouting out the Rumble. You know, if you're not a lizard person over there, use those opposable thumbs, leave some likes and comments, get in that chat. Popeye the Sailor, good times in the Jefferson when he and the neighbor burned a plant that looked like weed and they acted stoned, but it was a fern, the gardener said. That is a good episode. You know, reminds me of the Sanford and Son episode where Sanford makes a salad out of weed leaves and gives it to the cops. Very good. But Golden Monarch, 6 million, more than enough to retire anywhere that's not the United States, in reference to the $6 million man. So Golden Monarch, that would be very upsetting. Kill the fish, you indirectly kill the wildlife. So, but I think there was one more I saw. I love figs and almonds and all that dried fruit stuff. Part of my regular diet, says Popeye the Sailor. I thought it was spinach. You spinach and Earl. Vicky Adams, would they still kick the dad off of Good Times? I would not know. I feel like that would, you'd have to keep the dad in this time, right? You know, that's like switching the fucking one in Fresh Prince, switching, was it Vivian? They like switched actresses for that, right? Classically.
Yeah.
Fucking basteds. But anyway, let's get to your story. What do you got?
So this story kind of ties in with the first two in regards to, like, obviously our argue Palestine has been under occupation for the last 75 years and change, but then there's the Arab world, like Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Egypt, who are more than aware of what's happening, but are yet not doing much, if anything, to kind of support the Palestinians in their plight against Israel. And there's there is a reason for that. I don't think we've kind of gone into this in depth at all, but Ramzi Baroud did on Z Network that Consortium News pulled.
Yeah.
So he writes, hold on, let me get on my other screen.
You got it. You would do it.
Yeah.
I believe in you.
Yeah. So he writes about the Arab complicity in Israel's genocide. Arab failure in Palestine goes beyond disunity or incompetence. It reflects a much more cynical reality. So what does he mean by that? So we'll get into it. Explaining Arab political failure to challenge Israel through traditional analysis, such as disunity, general weakness, and a failure to prioritize Palestine, does not capture the full picture. The idea that Israel is brutalizing Palestinians simply because the Arabs are too weak to challenge the Benjamin Netanyahu government, or any government, I argue, even with that, the Zionist ideology in of itself. But and can we make that distinction, please? It's Bibi is just one man out of
Benjamin Netanyahu,
out of a movement. So,
yes,
like,
Collin,
you get rid of Benjamin.
Collin, we gotta blame it on a baby. We gotta blame it on a baby.
It's easy to blame it on. Well, it's easy to blame Bibi because he's right wing. So especially if you're left leaning or center, like, you can easily blame he's crazy, but he's not in of itself the problem. It's Zionism in of itself is the problem. So that would be the only thing I would push back on. It's not Bibi, it's the political ideology that is Zionism in of itself is the problem. But anyway, the idea that Israel is brutalizing Palestinians simply because the Arabs are too weak to challenge the Benjamin Netanyahu government, or any government, implies that, in theory, Arab regimes could unite around Palestine. However, this view oversimplifies the matter. Many well-meaning pro-Palestine commentators have long urged Arab nations to unite, pressure Washington to reassess its unwavering support for Israel, and take decisive actions to lift the siege on Gaza, among other crucial steps. I cut it in the wrong place. But anyway, while these steps may hold some value, the reality is far more complex, and such wishful thinking is unlikely to change the behavior of Arab governments. These regimes are more concerned with sustaining or returning to some sort of status quo, one in which Palestinians' liberation remains a secondary priority. Since the start of the Israeli genocide in Gaza on October 7th, the Arab position on Israel has been weak at best and treacherous at worst. Some Arab governments even went so far as to condemn Palestinian resistance in United Nations debates, while countries like China and Russia at least attempted to contextualize the October 7th Hamas assault on Israeli occupation forces imposing a brutal siege on Gaza. Countries like Bahrain placed the blame squarely on the Palestinians. With few exceptions, it took Arab governments weeks or even months to develop a relatively strong stance that condemned the Israeli offensive in any meaningful terms. Though the rhetoric began to shift slowly, the actions did not follow. While the Nasrallah movement in Yemen, alongside other Arab non-state actors, attempted to impose some form of pressure on Israel through a blockade, Arab countries instead worked to ensure Israel could withstand the potential consequences of its isolation. In the book War, Baumgartner disclosed that some Arab governments told then U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken that they had no objections to Israel's efforts to crush Palestinian resistance. However, some were concerned about the media images of mutilating Palestinian civilians, which could stir public unrest in their own countries.
That's very concerning. Just the pictures,
that public unrest,
not the actual slaughter. Right. Okay.
That public unrest never materialized, and with time, the genocide, famine, and cries for help in Gaza were normalized, yet as another tragic event, not unlike the war in Sudan or the strife in Syria. For 15 months of relentless Israeli genocide that resulted in the killing and wounding of over 162,000 Palestinians in Gaza, official Arab political institutions remained largely irrelevant in ending the war. In the U.S., the Biden administration was emboldened by such Arab inaction, continuing to push for greater normalization between Arab countries and Israel, even in the face of over 15,000 children killed in Gaza in the most brutal ways imaginable. While the moral failures of the West, the shortcomings of international law, and the criminal actions of Biden and his administration have been widely criticized, the complicity of Arab nation governments in enabling these atrocities and for serving as a shield for Israel's war crimes is often ignored. The Arabs have, in fact, played a more significant role in the Israeli atrocities in Gaza than we often recognize, some through their silence and others through direct collaboration with Israel.
Yep.
Throughout the war, reports surfaced indicating that some Arab countries, UAE, actively lobbied in Washington on behalf of Israel, advocating against an Egyptian Arab League proposal aimed at reconstructing Gaza without ethnically cleansing its population, an idea prompted by the Trump administration and Israel.
Yeah.
The Egypt proposal, which was unanimously accepted by Arab countries at their summit on March 4th, represented the strongest and most unified stance taken by the Arab world during the war.
Which I did see,
which was rejected,
a bunch of how that was a giant compromise, and it gave Israel a ton of incentives to try and do that, and still didn't work out. So, but
the proposal, which was rejected by Israel and dismissed by the U.S., helped shift discourse in the U.S. around the subject of ethnic cleansing. It ultimately led to comments made on March 12th by Trump during a meeting with Irish Prime Minister
Michael
Martin, where he stated that no one's expelling anyone from Gaza. For some Arab states to actively oppose the only relatively strong Arab position signals that the issue of Arab failures in Palestine goes beyond mere disunity or incompetence. It reflects a much darker and more cynical reality. Some Arabs align their interests with Israel, where free Palestine isn't just a non-issue, but a threat. The same applies to the Palestinian Authority of Ramallah, which continues to work hand in hand with Israel to suppress any form of resistance in the West Bank. Its concern in Gaza is not about ending the genocide, but ensuring the marginalization of its Palestinian rivals, particularly Hamas.
Well, and we covered that back on, if you look for They Eat Their Own, I think is the title of that segment, and the failures of Mahmoud Abbas, So,
right, which we'll get into in a second.
Yeah.
Thus, blaming the PA for mere weakness, for not doing enough, or for failing to unify the Palestinian ranks is a misreading of the situation. The priorities of Mahmoud Abbas and his PA allies are far different. Securing relative power over Palestinians, a power that can only be sustained through Israeli military dominance. These are difficult, yet critical truths, as they allow us to reframe the conversation, moving away from the false assumption that the Arab unity will resolve everything. The flaw in unity theory is that it naively assumes Arab regimes inherently reject Israeli occupation and support Palestine. While some Arab governments are generally outraged by Israel's criminal behavior and growing frustrated by the U.S. irrational policies in the region, others are driven by self-interest, their animosity towards Iran, and fear of rising Arab non-state actors. They are equally concerned about instability in the region, which rends their hold on power amid a rapidly shifting world order. As solidarity with Palestine has increasingly expanded from the global south to the global majority, Arabs remain marginally ineffective, fearing that significant political change in the region could directly challenge their own position.
A new world order.
Any thoughts?
Well, yeah, a couple. I've tried to find like this video a couple of times, and if anyone sees it, feel free to send it to me. But it was like, you know, the top supporters of Israel in the Middle East, right? And it went through like Qatar's gas and, you know, the UAE and the Saudi Arabia and all this stuff in the region that supports them. We've talked about the failures of, you know, Mahmoud Abbas before too, especially if anyone meets with him. I've seen a few photos of that going around. People can do their own sleuthing on who I mean there. But yeah, I mean, I've also seen some stuff about, you know, and talking about, you know, the Arabs are, it's the Arabs' fault that this is happening. None of them are supporting, you know, like they should be taking people in and like that whole nonsensical story too. And that none of them are also willing to like militarily fight back against Israel and mainly the United States and the entire Western civilizations. And I'm trying to, I looked for it all last night, this other video about how that's the onus is never on the Western civilizations. Like it's always put on courageous Arabs in the Middle East to fight back. You know, when they've been subjugated, bombed, and, you know, starved and, you know, proxy wars rampant in their region for the last, like, you know, century. So, but just another angle to this. But yeah, I mean, otherwise good stuff. So, not sure what the other thing is. Russia and China and how they're part of this too, right? So especially Russia, when the way Syria went, feel free to go look at the reporting from Vanessa and Fee and Eva on how Russia's complicit in that. So at least by de facto, they're still trying to get information on that, I do believe. But as of the way it looks right now, they chose one conflict to deal with at a time. So, you know,
right.
But yeah, especially with these tariffs, which we're going to get to later tonight too, how that affects those. So,
right.
We'll see. But yeah, anything else you wanted to add?
No. I mean,
cool.
Well, I hate saying this, but I don't. They're looking out. Basically, they're looking out for their best interests because many of them, looking at you, Saudi Arabia, wants to have their cake and eat it too. Like they're looking.
Yep.
I will argue that there are multiple agents.
Sure.
In terms of they're looking to be a part of BRICS, but they're also looking to be a part of the West. So,
yeah,
but I can almost argue that,
great. You know,
right? So,
Abu Dhabi,
and I can argue Egypt as well.
Yeah.
You know, like kind of playing both sides, trying to figure out what will be work in their best interests. So it's not so much weakness; it's just
Positioning for best advantage
for themselves.
Yeah.
Yes. Versus being in solidarity with Palestinians. I figure they just figure, well, we can afford to kind of toss them aside if it means stability for ourselves in the region. Because ultimately, anything that leads to, and I think the reality is, I think is kind of misgiven. I feel like if they kind of play into the hand of Israel being favored, that it would somewhat help them. But Israel has basically said they're looking to expand the borders, like well into the Middle East. So Egypt, in as far as south is there. So I think it's kind of almost foolish to believe that doing nothing would almost kind of make them favorable to Israel, when we've already reported many times that Israel's plan is to expand well beyond the borders that we have now.
Correct.
That's why they're invading Syria. That's why they're heading into Lebanon. That's why they're trying to recapture Egypt, or really trying to encourage, or at least at one point, to encourage Egypt to take displaced Gazans into their borders.
Yeah.
So yeah, but it's just really looking out for their best interests, in order to placate to, I call Israel as a proxy of the West, but essentially to gain what they're able to gain from whichever major player wants to be involved with them, which includes Russia and China.
Yep. Agreed. So I wonder what talking about this might get us. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
Could
we'll see
be-
in a second if anyone would like to give us a tip, perhaps,
Yay.
or not.
Yay.
No pressure.
Money, please.
But we're demonetized regardless by YouTube, so we don't get ads revenue. Sadly, we weren't getting that much anyway. But we can definitely depend on you guys if you're able. If you'd like to, you can scan the QR code that you see on your screen, or go to the Ko-fi link that you see at the bottom of your screen. Or if you're on YouTube, you can type in !donate, all one word, and we'll take you to our Ko-fi page where you're able to give as little as $1 to help us out towards, paying for the programming that we use in order to do these shows. So we were able to break even, as well as help to finance our members in equipment that they need in order to improve upon that content. So if you're able to help us out in that way, we would appreciate it. If you cannot give financially, that's all right. You could still help us for free by liking, subscribing, and sharing our content. So we really do appreciate it.
People?
Hey.
Oh,
Big money, Sean. Ding, 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 ding. That's what I need to change it to. Whenever Sean gives, it's just like rolls, one-armed bandit. You know what I mean? Right. Hits the jackpot on him. But anyway, appreciate you, fam.
But thank you, Sean. So Sean sent for the great reporting. Well, we're not reporting, we're commenting. So shout out to all our tried and true and trusted sources to be able to give you the stories that you're hearing on this show. So more for them than us. So, but thank you for the compliment anyway. But yeah, thanks for Sean for giving us that $10 donation and help us get to 3K. So we're actually almost there, honestly. I think we're just shy of 24. So hopefully by the end of the year, if not even sooner, we'll be able to hit 3K. Maybe sooner. So subscribe, please. We would appreciate it. And thanks for watching.
Yeah.
Man.
Cool. All right. Before we get to that last one, should we check out the chats? We should probably do that. So Sean popped us up to 32%, saying for the great reporting. Appreciate it. We find this very easy. We just go to the trusted places on the interwebs and read it to you, comrades. But mostly, we try. But what else we got? Sean says they are getting paid to turn their pack. Sean also mentioning, behind the scenes, we stream to multiple platforms, one of them being Twitch. And occasionally in the chat, you'll see a bot that comes into our Twitch channel saying to get cheap viewers on stream, boo. But Sean says, Stream Boo is Israeli, I bet you anything. So, probably. Also on Twitch, Mac9135, Russia has problems with Ukraine. They had to bail. Russia can't power project and can't put its army all over the world like the US. Yes and no. There's some questions for sure. So, and it looks like that Ukraine thing's still going to be an issue. So, we'll see how that works out. But, no, I pretty much said that, right? He had to pull out because they can only fight one front at once for the most part. So, and China's pretty much stayed fairly neutral this entire time. So, but
in their case, it makes sense for them to stay neutral. So,
yeah,
they wouldn't want to pop off anything that could potentially lead to World War III. So, yeah.
Not to mention problems in Brazil and India as far as BRICS alliance is concerned. Right? So, almost all the multipolars, quote unquote, are like trying to stay out of it for the most part and or assist Israel. So,
right.
But we should probably get to our next one. So, just as a warning, this one's going to be a bit graphic in nature. So, as far as if you are triggered by the sexual assaults and just general atrocities, I would come back in 15-30 minutes. But for those of you who are willing to witness the suffering, we'll get into it. But so this is from a friend of the show, Brett Wilkins, over at Common Dreams. Writes, every atrocity imaginable, litany of Israeli war crimes continues. So, as Israel Defense Forces, or occupation forces, bombing continued to kill and maim large numbers of Palestinians across the Strip over the weekend and into Monday, the discovery of the bodies of medical workers who were apparently executed by their captors, and the publication of several reports in which Israeli soldiers admits to torturing prisoners and using civilians as human shields, have drawn renewed war crime accusations and calls for accountability. How many in that one paragraph alone? Anyway, on Sunday, the Palestinian Red Crescent Society said it had recovered the bodies of 15 Palestinian first responders from a mass grave, including 8 Red Crescent workers and 6 civil defense personnel who were killed by Israeli forces on March 23rd while traveling on duty in 5 ambulances, a fire truck, and a United Nations vehicle in the Al-Hashashin area of southern Gaza. So this is the Red Crescent. This is essentially their Red Cross, right? The IFRC condemns the killing of 8 Palestinian Red Crescent medics in Gaza. We mourn their loss and stand with the Palestinian Red Crescent. They were responding to wounded people. Their ambulances were clearly marked. They should have been protected. stop the killing. Jonathan Whitehall, head of the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs in Gaza, said Sunday that the vehicles were picked off one by one. Their bodies were gathered and buried in the mass grave, Whitehall added. We're digging them out with their uniforms, with their gloves on. They were here to save lives. Instead, they ended up in a mass grave. The Gaza Health Ministry said some of these bodies were bound and shot in the chest before being buried in a deep hole to prevent their identification. So they've been literally burying the bodies to hide them. Accusing Israel of a heinous crime, the ministry called on UN agencies and relevant international bodies to conduct an urgent investigation into these crimes and hold the occupation accountable for committing them. So here's Jonathan Whitehall, right? This is those Red Crescent uniforms that clearly look like medical staff, right? You know. So today, on the first day of Eid, we returned and recovered the buried bodies of 8 Red Crescent civil defense and 1 UN staff member. They were killed in their uniforms, driving their clearly marked vehicles, wearing their gloves, on their way to save lives. This should never have happened. Eva Kareen Bartlett says one of them had his clothes removed from his upper body and another one is beheaded. Palestinian civil defense spokesperson Mahmoud Basal gave a detailed account of the conditions of the bodies of the Red Crescent and civil defense workers who were discovered buried in a mass grave in Tal al-Shatan, Rafah. The victims had been executed at point-blank range by Israeli forces after being detained during a coordinated rescue mission. Their ambulances were later found bombed, and their bodies were missing for days until UN, OSHA, Palestinian Civil Defense, and Red Crescent crews exhumed the mass graves. The hands of many were zip-tied, and the signs of field execution were evident on their corpses. Remember, Collin, when people were talking about Rafah being a red line? Remember that? Like, that's now. That's Rafah. Here's the red line. Do something, please. Thank you very much. As IDF spokesperson said, troops opened fire on the convoy because it was advancing suspiciously toward their position. Following an initial assessment, it was determined that the forces had eliminated a Hamas military operative, Muhammad Amin Ibrahim Shubaki, who took part in the October 7th massacre, along with 8 other terrorists from Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. Gee, where have we heard that before, Collin? Like, every time. Ugh. So...
Yeah, we killed him, but trust us, this guy was horrid.
Israel officials routinely claim, often with little or no evidence, that Palestinian first responders, UN workers, journalists, and other civilians that it kills are members of Hamas or other militant resistant groups. Speaking of journalists, this is Hassam Shabbat. He knew he would be framed like this. Israel's army has released fabricated dossiers framing us. The last remaining journalists in northern Gaza reporting on Israel's extermination and ethnic cleansing as, quote, terrorists. This blatant and belligerent attempt to transfer us, the last witnesses in the north, into killable targets is an assassination threat, an obvious attempt to preemptively justify our murder. We would like to remind everyone that murdering our colleague, Ismail al-Ghul, Israel released a document that claimed he supposedly received a military ranking on July 1st, 2007, when he would have been a 10-year-old child. So the numbers don't add up, do they? Eva Bartlett, regarding the false Israeli claims that the ambulances carry Palestinian resistance fighters, in January 2009, Eva volunteered with Palestinian medics of the Red Crescent Society, riding in their ambulances in northern Gaza to document their work and who the victims they rescued were. The ambulances did not carry Palestinian resistance fighters. There were no weapons in the ambulances. Israel claims this to justify the unjustifiable, slaughtering medics. The Israeli army killed one medic I had worked with, firing a dart bomb directly at his ambulance, killing him. An Israeli sniper fired at least 14 shots at medics, and another ambulance I was in, first targeting uniformed Palestinian medics during ceasefire hours, shooting one medic in the leg, and shooting our ambulance. The International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society said in a statement Sunday that it is outraged by the killings, which it called the single most deadly attack on the Red Crescent workers anywhere in the world since 2017. After 7 days of silence and having access denied to the area of Rafah, where they were last seen, the bodies of ambulance officers Mustafa Kufaga, Saleh Mumair, and Ezzeddin Sha'ath, and first responder volunteers Muhammad Balul, Muhammad Al-Hila, Asraf Abu Labda, Raid Al-Sharif, and Rafat Radwan were retrieved today. The statement noted ambulance officer Assad Al-Nasra is still missing. So, shout out for me for, I think, getting all those names close. You know? It's tough for me, dog. But nothing that at least 30 Red Crescent workers and volunteers have been killed by Israeli forces during the war. IFRC Secretary General Jakan Shapangan, that one I probably butchered. I am heartbroken. These dedicated ambulance workers were responding to wounded people. They were humanitarians. They were emblems that should have protected them. Their ambulances were clearly marked. They should have returned to their families. They did not. Even in the most complex conflict zones, there are rules, Champagne stressed. These rules of international humanitarian law could not be clearer. Civilians must be protected. Humanitarians must be protected. Health services must be protected. So, agreed. Our network is in mourning, but this is not enough, he added. Instead of another call on all parties to protect and respect humanitarians and civilians, I pose a question. When will this stop? All parties must stop the killing and all humanitarians must be protected. Journalist Muhammad Al-Safin compared the killings to last year's IDF massacre of 6-year-old Hind Rajab, 5 of her relatives, and 2 PRCS medics who rushed to the site of the attack in a doomed bid to rescue the wounded child after she called for help. We did cover that too, I do believe. So, on Sunday, the British newspaper The Independent published an investigation into alleged Israeli tortures of Palestinians detained at facilities included Offa Prison in the illegally occupied West Bank and the notorious base in the Negev Desert by the name of Sid Taiman. So, as this report begins, I'm going to give the last warning for any of those people who are sensitive to SA or R words, you know? So, that's going forward. You should know. You can come back when the segment's over. But handcuffed and cowering on the floor of a cell in a military base in southern Israel, the Palestinian found himself surrounded by 5 soldiers. Armed with dogs, the 5 reservists allegedly kicked, punched, and stamped on the man as he lay on the ground. Continuing their assault, they are accused of attacking him with taser guns and sharp objects. Sexually abusing him with these instruments, at one point the soldiers allegedly stabbed him so hard they pierced his buttocks and anus. The brutal alleged assault left the man hospitalized with a punctured lung, cracked ribs, and a tear in his rectum needing surgery for his stoma. He had not been charged with any crime. So, I mean, The Independent noted details regarding some of the dozens of Palestinian detainees who have died in Israeli custody. The IDF is currently conducting its own probe into the deaths of at least 36 Sid Taiman prisoners, including one who died after allegedly being sodomized with an electric baton. The fact that we see some signs of abuse means that this is probably the tip of the iceberg, said one Israeli physician who had overseen multiple autopsies on dead detainees. So, this is from Transstating Palestine. Israel civilians were invited to Israel torture camps to watch nude Palestinians get searched and raped. According to the testimonies of Palestinian women released by the IOF, both female and male Israeli soldiers raped Palestinian women from Gaza and the West Bank. The testimonies were presented during the UN Commission of Inquiry's public hearing on March 11, 2025. Kifaya Kareem, International Advocacy Officer at the Women's Central for Legal Aid and Counseling, and witness number 3, a Palestinian woman human rights defender, provided detailed accounts of sexual, reproductive, and other forms of gender-based violence committed by Israeli security forces and settlers. This was part of the Commission's 3rd round of hearings to document violations against Palestinians with a focus on crime targeting women's bodies. So let's go here and here.
She was taken to Sedate Man and she was nude searched over and over again and filmed, and then she was raped twice by Israeli male soldiers, 2 of them at a time, while videotaping her. We have also one testimony of a woman who was also taken. She says she was also raped by an inspection device by a female soldier more than once. They inserted the inspection device in her rectum. We have also one testimony of a woman saying that she was strip searched and they would beat her on her behind and they would humiliate her in front of each other. Most of the women also who were taken from Gaza, West Bank, and Jerusalem said they were beaten on their genitals, which has made us to conclude that there must have been a directive that's been given to the Israeli army to treat women in such manner, because in Jerusalem you're treated by completely different law enforcement than in Gaza or in the West Bank. But all these women said they were beaten on their genitals.
And I could just add on about the women who were forcibly disappeared in Gaza. Like I said before, it was usually as they were fleeing south through the safety corridor, they were abducted at the checkpoint. Many were taken to the Zakim detention center and the Negev detention center, all together in one large hall, forced to strip completely naked and just sit in this hall, the women amongst each other and the men amongst each other. And it's also been reported and known that Israeli civilians are invited to come to this detention center and mock the Palestinian prisoners while they're naked, photograph them, and watch them as if it's a zoo. So that's something that we've seen.
Also, when it comes to checkpoints, like I said, it's where the sexual violence happens and it goes unreported. So we have a testimony of a teenage girl who was made to undress a man because he refused to undress. They made her undress him, even though she's not related to him. She doesn't know who that man is. And while being searched and touched and molested on their breast and on their genitals as well.
So despicable things are being done.
She was taken to
and we are actively playing a part in doing them. So in an anonymous testimony leaked to The Independent, one Sid Taman guard described prevailing attitude of, yes, they need to be beaten, it must be done. We began looking for opportunities to do so, the soldier said, adding that when he spoke out against the beating of one detainee, he was told, shut up, you leftist. These are Gazans. These are terrorists. What's wrong with you? One former Sid Taman detainee said that every meter you moved, they beat you, they hit you, they insulted you, they used dogs, tear gas, and electric shock. IDF troops and veterans who were posted at Sid Taman have provided similar details about Israel's Abu Ghraib, a reference to the U.S. torture prison outside Baghdad during the Iraq War. Israeli doctors and medics have described forced starvation and 24-hour shackling so severe that prisoners have had limbs amputated. A number of Sid Taman guards were arresting last year following the leak of a video allegedly showing that raping a Palestinian detainee. The arrest outraged far-right Israelis, a mob of whom stormed Sid Taman in a failed bid to free the accused guards. I do remember that the right to rape, that was that movement. So, as The Independent noted, among these held in Israeli detention are many of Gaza's healthcare workers, including doctors, nurses, and paramedics. Some of these prisoners have died in custody, including the renowned surgeon Dr. Abdan al-Bursh, who may have been raped to death, according to Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967. Earlier this month, an independent UN panel found that Israel had systematically used reproductive, sexual, and other forms of gender-based violence against Palestinian men, women, and children during the war. So here's Eva Karine Bartlett, right? We were talking about healthcare workers being detained. Here is Dr. Hussam, right? We've talked about him before. She writes that their usual administrative detention to keep him locked up without charge. This man is a hero, but the sadistic Israelis are torturing him. Please keep talking about Dr. Hassam Abu Safia. The Israeli Beersheba court has issued a 6-month administrative detention order for Dr. Hussam, director of Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza. Dr. Abu Safia was abducted in late December during Israel's raid on the hospital. So they're giving him another 6 months. And we know they've already been torturing him. So the IDF has responded to these and other allegations by claiming it operates in accordance with international law. However, the International Criminal Court last year issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former IDF Minister Yoav Gallant, who ordered a complete siege of Gaza, blamed for deadly starvation and disease there for alleged war crimes and crimes against humanity. Israel is also the subject of an ongoing ICJ case brought by South Africa. Also on Sunday, Haaretz, Israel's oldest newspaper, published a piece by an anonymous Israeli soldier who said that in Gaza, almost every IDF platoon keeps a human shield. We operate a sub-army of slaves, the soldier said, describing how innocent Palestinians are used to check buildings for Hamas fighters or booby traps before IDF troops enter. I recently saw that the IDF's Military Police Criminal Investigation Division opened 6 investigations into the use of Palestinian civilians as human shields, and my jaw dropped. He wrote, I've seen cover-ups before, but this is a new low. Previous reporting has detailed the IDF's widespread use of Palestinian civilians, including children, as human shields in Gaza. The IDF even has a name for the practice, the Mosquito Protocol. In one case, an 80-year-old man was used as a human shield before being shot dead by Israeli troops. The IDF thoroughly documented use of non-combatants as human shields stands in stark contrast with mostly basic claims of Hamas using Palestinian civilians in such a manner. The new report comes as Israeli forces continued their assault on Gaza. Health and medical officials in Gaza said at least 41 Palestinians were killed in airstrikes throughout the Strip on Monday, the second day of the Muslim holiday Eid al-Fitr. This followed the killing of at least 64 Palestinians across Gaza on Sunday. Approximately 1,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since Israel resumed its assault on the coastal enclave on March 18th, including hundreds of children. Israel's 542-day annihilation of Gaza has left more than 175,000 Palestinians dead, wounded, or missing since October 7th. Thoughts, Care Bear?
Just more bullshit.
Yeah.
Like usual. So, of course, it's not going to be reported on by mainstream media because, you know, they're complicit in Israel's crimes. So, yeah, it's same shit, different day. Basically.
Unfortunately. So.
Free Palestine! From the river to the sea!
Unfortunately, until Palestine is free, I will continue to do these stories. So that's most likely why we're demonetized. So you can scan this QR code you see on your screen. Go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork. Scan that QR code, or it's always in the doobly-doo. We appreciate any monetary support you can give. If not, like and subscribe. Please share the video and make sure to leave a comment. It's how you beat suppression. So we appreciate it. And otherwise, thanks for watching. Okay, we did it. Almost to the last story. We can head to the chats. So I think it was over on the Rumble. It was I will only live if Reef weaves me a fish basket. So, and I replied, I've always wanted to do one of those Alaskan baleen baskets. You ever heard of those? Like, you know what baleen is, right? So, like, it's like whale teeth, right? So,
yeah.
The whales that, like, they filter feed generally, give or take, not quite the same thing, but like they essentially, like, that thing you do where like you push liquid through your teeth, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think of that, right? You take a big gulp of seawater filled with krill or, tiny little fishies, right? And you got to get the water back out. So they're essentially just spraying water through teeth, which are they're like long hair things, and that gets woven into baskets by native peoples. So pretty neat stuff. God, are they expensive? You can purchase them, but they're very expensive because, you need whale teeth. Where are you going to get that? Where are you going to get whale teeth at? That's right. Tough. You can't just go to Walmart for whale teeth. What do you got over on the YouTubes? So, bunch of just fuck Israel's, which of course,
yeah.
Sean the Accord Lord says the fuck and not one word from any leaders. God damn it.
Right.
And also asked when will it end.
By the beheaded babies, though, which we're still hearing about, that has been debunked by even mainstream media.
And the, the rape gangs or whatever that Hamas supposedly has. As always, like, fucking every accusation is a confession, which I saw that as well. Sulamoon, we need to work fast at organizing. Colin's with you on that. Cynic, yeah, I can't type. My hands are shaking. Disturbing. Yep. And keep in mind, this is what we bring you guys. Both me, Collin, Indy, and the rest of us, and I'm sure you people as well, especially the journalists out here, have seen far, far worse in our feeds and sent to us directly. Like, brutal visions are burned into all of our brains. So, not great. Especially the ones with kids. Jesus Christ, dude. My heart breaks for those people who, have to watch that and imagine their kids. Tough shit, dude. Sulamoon, people think it'll stop at Palestinians. Look at the brown shirt cities being built. We're next. Yeah, but they get to wear their own masks to hide their faces. So that's probably real nice. The depths of their depravity knows no fucking bounds. It's an absolute abyss, says Cynic. So, Shawnee Core Lord Sula, that's especially why it kills me more in my heart, because stupid humans have no clue what's coming. I hope we're wrong. So, very similar thoughts here. But anyway, you ready to get to our next one?
Yep. So, got an extra story tonight. I know Reef didn't want to do this necessarily, so he's humoring me once again, but I think it is important because I'm sure this is going to be a topic we're going to be discussing for minutes. And even with this, I will admit I am not a economics guy. I'm not a finance guy. So there's a lot of information regarding the charts that I probably need to sit down and talk to Indy more because he's a little more.
I guarantee we'll be talking about it Sunday as well. And
I'm sure
he is an economic guy, so
Yeah. But I could speak on it just in terms of, and I tell you guys, I'm not that smart compared to what you might think. I am just a regular guy that happens to care, as I say. So I just want to kind of break it down in things in terms of how a regular person can get the information, hopefully. That being said, Reef, did you know that today was Liberation Day?
What is Liberation Day, Care Bear?
To be quite honest, I don't even know, but that's what Trump has been saying, that today was its Liberation Day. My guess is it's due to, now that he's essentially implemented these tariffs, that the idea of these tariffs is meant to push us Americans to buy American in order to save money, allegedly in an attempt to boost the economy.
We do a little
now,
trolling.
I'm going to go into.
We do a little trolling.
So that's the idea behind these tariffs. Is essentially a tax imposed on us that when we buy shit that happens to be made or produced in other countries. So, but let's go into a little bit more. So this is from the BBC. Unfortunately, I don't particularly want to use them, but given that this is breaking, I'm sure there'll be a little bit more details regarding these towers within the next few days, if not hours. But here's the beginnings of, just before these tariffs were implemented, that the BBC reported on, I believe, yesterday, if not Monday. So go ahead.
Well, the clock is ticking towards what President Trump has called America's Liberation Day. He says he will unveil a massive slate of import taxes on all countries on Wednesday, though he's also promised to be kind. Tariffs are taxes paid by US importers on foreign purchased goods. Details are still limited on the range of the tariffs, but there is growing unease about what this tariff war will mean for the global economy. The UK government has been trying to negotiate a last-minute trade deal to exempt British goods, but confirmed yesterday it does expect the UK will be hit when the import taxes are introduced. President Trump has been speaking to the media in the Oval Office, where he said he expects his tariffs to give the US economy a major boost.
I think that we're going to be at $5 trillion of investment. I think you're going to have investments very shortly. We're already 3.5, and we have commitments, verbal commitments for a lot more. And numbers like that have never been done in this country. And it's going to get harder. This is in 2 months. It's really less than 2 months, because since we've really gone out with it.
Let's speak now to Maria de Mertzis, Chief Economist at the Conference Board of Europe. Maria, good to have you with us. Just listening to President Trump there, I wonder if you agree, if we could just look at the US first. Do you think it's going to be a major boost to the US economy, these tariffs?
It's unlikely there will be a boost. I mean, the first thing will be trade will necessarily reduce, and that will have an impact on the US economy. We're already seeing revisions in growth downwards, upward revisions for inflation, and of course the stock markets that are extremely volatile. Nothing of that is good for the US economy. But next to that, there's other measures that follow the tariffs, and that is corporate taxes reducing, trying to attract investments back to the US, either from American economies that operate elsewhere or from global economies. And actually, there is some evidence of that some companies might be coming back to the US that will boost investment. Whether the net effect is positive remains to be seen, but I am not hopeful.
Higher inflation, greater recession risks, that's what people are saying for the US. And obviously there's going to be a knock-on effect for the global economy as well. Tell us what your thoughts are on what this could mean for the rest of the world.
Well, again, it will have global effects everywhere, especially for jurisdictions like the EU, where I live, which is a big exporting region. We rely a lot on exports, and therefore exports to the US will necessarily suffer. The EU exports a lot to the US, both in goods and services. That, of course, will take a hit. But I think global trade will take a hit. I think there will be a reduction in trade that we haven't seen in a long time, except the pandemic era. And on top of that, of course, we are going to have a high increase in prices, and the consumer will see greater inflation on goods and services that they buy on a daily basis. And, of course, much less choice. So the consumer will definitely be worse off.
Maria, what about the stock markets around the world? Many are saying that the hit from the tariffs could still be coming. We haven't seen the worst of it yet.
No, we haven't. Till we have some certainty in terms of what goes on in tariffs, there will be volatility. Now, it's interesting to say also that if we do have some certainty of what tariffs will be, that will be, of course, bad for the economy, but at least we have some certainty of what it is. And you see that, we hear it from businesses, that they want some certainty so that they can prepare. So some news, even if they are bad news, it's important to reduce that volatility.
And tell us a bit more about those US businesses that are starting to reshore in response to this threat of tariffs. We don't know yet what impact that will have, but how long does it normally take for a business to do that?
It depends. Big manufacturers, of course, find it difficult to relocate unless they have already installations in the US. But we have heard from NVIDIA, the big semiconductor company, that they will reshore. They will bring some of their operations in China back into the US with huge investments for the next 4 years in the US, which is effectively what President Trump wants. He wants manufacturing back in the US. And we've also heard Apple relocating back, bringing some of the Asian production back to the US in fear of tariffs hitting their Chinese operations. So there is some movement, which is also being helped by corporate taxation reducing, which is one of the big campaign points that President Trump used. So it's not just about tariffs. It's also about creating a much more friendly environment conducive to businesses in the US.
It's so interesting to get your thoughts, Maria. Thank you very much.
So I have a thought on this already.
Okay.
So, so they mentioned like some of the big name businesses like Apple, they're able to return some of their operations here, which they can do because they have the means, and Apple is a worldwide company, so like they have the means to do that. What about someone who's in a smaller business? Like, depending on what kind of small business owner you have, I'm thinking of clothes in particular. A lot of clothes, generally, when you produce them, if you're a small business, are not necessarily being made here or published here, depending on what company you use. Many of them are done overseas more often than not. So immediately I'm just thinking of this can affect small businesses in terms of if they're not producing, if they're using if part of their production is overseas, that can affect small businesses here. So because people who have small businesses don't necessarily have the means, depending on what they're working on, to reshore back here, or to replace another country where it would be more favorable, depending on the tariffs. And we actually did pull the tariffs that was released earlier today, so we'll look into that later. But yeah, so again, it's the idea of people, like the investment of having businesses incentivized to be here. Number one, that's going to take a while if that happens at all, depending on the business. And then number two, for smaller business people, that may not be as easy to do. But then having to shift their business here, especially if production is not necessarily being made here, and that's the problem with America. Like, what do we produce? We don't produce much. If anything, we export the fair majority of the things that we use every day. Like, you can even check probably like where your items are made from. I would guarantee most of them, if not a fair majority of them, are made in China. So expect to be paying a lot more money, for electronics, for sure. Depending on the car you have. If you're looking to buy a new car, good luck with that. But yeah, especially like for big businesses, like unfortunately some of the small businesses that I do shop at, their production is based overseas. So actually, I just got reminded as I'm saying this, I got an email from one of the businesses I shop at. They basically said, oh, after this weekend, because they were having a sale, after this weekend, our prices are going up. So yeah, so basically you're having to pay a lot more for the stuff that you buy. So thanks, Trump. Any thoughts before I move on?
No.
Yeah, because that just kind of hit me. It's like small businesses are going to be affected by this. I don't think this is necessarily a good thing. As well. I think Desert Manta said weapons. Like you would know this better. Like weapons are made overseas generally.
Mm-hmm. Generally,
Yeah,
well,
so-
yes and no. It's also a big market here in the States, for sure. It's some of our biggest exports. You know, I mean, you got to think the classics as far as like what won the West. They're all manufactured here, generally, give or take. You know, some of them got some factories elsewhere, but plenty of, you know, Halliburton, Raytheon, you know, Boeing. So, like GE.
So again, like the normal businesses that would, that we shit on anyway, will benefit, obviously.
Johnson and Johnson. Like, I mean, this is all like, I feel like it's a couple of things, you know. One, it's a way for Trump to manipulate the narratives that he could easily roll back anyway, or have the Supreme Court shut down, right? And then he gets to blame someone else anyway, right? Like, he does this kind of stuff frequently. You know, it's a very Musk move, too, to put something out and then roll it back and go, see how good I am, or, you know... they did that recently with something where the Supreme Court said no, and they're like, "Oh, boo!" Anyway, you know, like they moved right the fuck on. So, but yeah, I know Indy would talk about, you know, just steel markets and car manufacturing stuff and things like that. I mean, it affects a load. Food too, you know.
Food.
So. Like, a lot of your produce is not from here. I hate to tell you.
Right.
You know? So, like, you know, eggs, dairy, that kind of stuff is generally here. You know?
Although, I will say, I have a tin hat fear with eggs, because I have to get eggs now at Whole Foods.
Okay.
Or Target.
Yeah.
If I'm lucky to get them there. You know? And it's not like the cheap ones. It's
I need to buy another coop. That's what I need to do. You know, we have one. We've had chickens, but
like
a
the
fucking
cheap ones
got them. Damn Hawks! Damn
the cheap
you,
ones
American
that you can
Eagles!
Get for like around, like the cheap eggs that you can probably get around $3, $4, $5, which that ain't even cheap. But like the cheapest you can get, you can't get anymore. Like the ones that I'm seeing now, you can get. Granted, you'll get a little bit more. You probably can get like 12 or upwards of a pack, like up to 2 dozen.
Yeah.
You know, like. I could only get them at Whole Foods now. So I wonder if that's on purpose to make people pay more in order to get shit like eggs. So, but anyway, just a random thought. But anyway, so we pulled this real quick paragraph from Frightways. We've never used them before, but
Indy uses them occasionally.
Sent this to me. So when Noy Bahoni writes, Trump mulls 20% universal tariff on all foreign imports. Advisors for President Donald Trump have drafted a proposal to impose a 20% universal tariff on almost all goods imported into the U.S. The Washington Post reported yesterday. White House advisors said several options are still on the table, including another plan for a country-by-country reciprocal approach that will match the tariffs they impose on U.S. goods, which, spoiler, that's what they ended up doing. Trump has repeatedly called April 2nd, today, at the time of this recording, Liberation Day, aiming to impose a wider range of reciprocal tariffs on nations with duties on U.S. goods. The president will be announcing a tariff plan that will roll back the unfair trade practices that have been ripping off this country for decades. He's doing this in the best interest of the American worker, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters on Monday. So let's go to that, what Trump has to say. This is from Associated Press.
AP. Garbage, AP.
Garbage, but
garbage. Sorry, we'll Jersey it up. Garbage.
But we have Liberation Day, as you know, on April 2nd.
President Trump has called Wednesday, April 2nd, Liberation Day. He calls it Liberation from foreign goods in the U.S. markets and making sure that U.S. goods are what's being purchased by consumers here. So, but we don't exactly know all the details of what President Trump has planned. We don't know which sector is going to hit, which countries, how high the cost will go. We're told that it's still in flux, things are still being finalized. But we know that if he goes through with this, it could have a severe impact on costs for consumers. It is already having an impact on the markets. So we are all waiting to see the details of what exactly President Trump has planned. Well, we can look at the auto tariffs that President Trump said would go into effect actually on April 3rd. He announced them earlier this month. And we have some independent economic analyses, actually, the one that comes from the famed economist Art Laffer. He's actually one of President Trump's favorite economists. In his own private analyses, Mr. Laffer said it could raise the prices of cars by more than $4,700 for consumers. Now, President Trump says with his tariffs on cars.
Because, like, keep in mind, the tariff doesn't mean, because you as a consumer aren't going to do the math exactly, you know?
Right.
So they're definitely going to mark it up on top of the tariff, because why wouldn't they? Like, you know, it'll just go twice as expensive than it would even normally be, you know, twice as expensive. So, you know, and they're just going to claim, oh, well, this thing and this thing is more expensive, so we had to make it more expensive, you know? So
it could bring more of the manufacturing back home. It would ultimately lower prices. But President Trump also says he doesn't care if the prices go higher for a little bit, because it means that ultimately people would buy American products. And that's his goal here. I would watch for reaction from Republican lawmakers, especially from these farm states. Tariffs, depending on how they are shaped, tend to hurt farm states the most. And these are Trump voters. So what are voters in Iowa, South Dakota, Kansas, and what are the representatives from those areas? What are they going to say? That's going to be a really interesting storyline to watch in the next coming days and weeks.
Yeah. Sure.
So update. So this was released today. So this is from the White House Twitter page that they released the reciprocal tariffs that they decided to go with.
Yep.
And
Laos.
And some of these numbers are
Trinidad.
Are I mean, we can go through a few. Let's go through a couple of them. So let's go to the top on that left side. So China.
China.
Can you zoom in?
Yeah. Here. Come on. 67%.
I guess. And
34%.
US, 34%. European Union, 39%.
20%.
US, what percent?
Vietnam, 90%.
Right.
46% for the US.
UK at 10. South Africa, 60%. And then 30. So yeah, basically our allies generally are a little bit more favorable, and then everyone else not so much, depending on the country. So I pulled this earlier.
Oh no, sorry.
This is from, so it's okay. So this is from James Suroslecki, who tweeted, just figured out where these, now again, I am not an economist, I'm not a numbers guy, but I could tell you what I think about these tariffs in a minute. But anyway, he said, so just figured out where these fake tariff rates come from. They didn't actually calculate tariff rates plus non-tariff barriers as they say they did. Except for every country, they just took our trade deficit with that country and divided it by the numbers exports to us. So we have a 17.9 billion trade deficit with Indonesia. Its exports to us are 18 billion. So 17.9 divided by 28 equals 64%, which Trump claims is the tariff rate Indonesia charges us. What extraordinary nonsense is. So basically, it sounds like to me, and I could be wrong, sounds like an upcharge, essentially. So that I feel that's what it basically means. So here. So
as a reminder,
he continues. As a reminder, Congress could repeal all these tariffs tomorrow and take back the complete authority over tariffs and trade that the Constitution gives it. Every congressman who does not vote to do that is effectively choosing to support this massive tax on U.S. consumers.
Well, keep an eye on your Congress people. So,
right. This round of tariffs is likely illegal since Trump is relying on his authority under the IEEPA, which requires there to not be an unusual and extraordinary threat, which is a trade deficit, which a trade deficit is not. But it's very unlikely a court will overrule Trump, so it's up to Congress to act. Congress created this stupid situation by delegating so much power over tariffs to the president, and then Trump exploited every loophole or vague language in the law to grab even more power. It's time for them to end this farce and take back that power back.
I wonder if you'll see any filibusters for something like this. You know, probably not. I'm betting.
Probably not. So David DeWitt tweeted, "Here's a Rick kick about how Trump's tariffs are going to hike prices for everything. Once that happens, even if the tariffs go away, the prices are never, ever going to go back down ever again." So that's basically, I think, the reality. We've seen the inflation go up and up. You know, according to reports, they've gone down slightly. Prices gone up, but not to the degree where people are kind of breaking even as far as living. They're still high. And now with these trials, things are just going to be even worse. So basically, you can just surmise it, play Misty, essentially.
Yep. Will do.
You should have that on already.
I do, but my phone literally my phone locked itself. Come on.
Why you have that on your...
Well, I have Stream Decks on my phone. What do you mean? You know?
We're fucked.
But see, I do have it.
Right. So what would that look like in light of tariffs? This is from David McWilliams from Common Dreams. This is an op-ed where he writes, "Look around, the signs of a Trump recession are everywhere." I would argue, as I said many times on the show, we've probably been in a recession, but it's just easier to call it a recession under a Republican president, I imagine. So the latest signs from the American heartland, Midwest, are not encouraging. The average voter confidence about their economic prospects is falling quicker than that at almost any other time on record. So he continues, "Once you start looking, the signs of an American recession are everywhere. The secondhand market is heating up, a classic pre-recession indicator. People are unloading luxury goods. Secondhand clothes apps such as RealReal, Depop, and Grailed, I've never heard of this before, are filling up with designer handbags and sneakers bought during the la-la economy of the pandemic. This always happens before a crash. You might remember that eBay boomed before the 2008 recession. People panic sold designer bags faster than you can say Anglo-Proximity note. Surges always lead to sell-offs. It looks like 2025 will be the year the pandemic chickens come home to roost. When the plague hit 5 years ago this week, 5 years ago, governments closed down our economies, and rather than impoverish workers who were forced to stay home, national treasuries opened up the fiscal and monetary spigots. Government spending soared and interest rates were cut to negative territory. About 15 trillion of fiscal monetary sweeties were doled out by the world's richest governments to protect their stay-at-home electorates. The governments had no choice. A Great Depression would have accompanied the plague. Investment and speculation took off in a splurge of credit, consumption, and debt. As sure as night follows day, the credit cycle rolls, and we are about to pay a terrible price for the emergency economies of COVID-19. In tune with our always-on age, the coming American recession will be live streamed on Instagram. Every small change in consumer confidence and business sentiment will be videoed, shared, commented on, and thus amplified. We are witnessing the TikTokization of the business cycle, meaning the economic cycle, previously a slow-moving, deliberate phenomenon, will pick up pace, becoming fitful and immediate, and we're beginning to see that already. In the past, it took people time to realize that the economy backdrop was changing. Today, with social media and the US president who behaves more like a near-bankrupt day trader than a long-term investor, our collective time horizons have been slashed from years to months, weeks to minutes. The impact of a slowing economy on investment and spending will be almost instantaneous. The late signs from the American heartland are not encouraging. The average voter's confidence about their economic prospects is falling quicker than at almost any other time on record. The litany of surveys pointing to recession, or more accurately, a Trump session, not to mention the sell-off in American stock markets, suggests that we are on the cusp of something enormous. The incoherence of Trump economics, with its off and on tariffs, is already indebted consumers and businesses even more anxious. Punchers all across income brackets are panicking and consumer confidence is collapsing, although it is richer workers who are most worried. This probably reflects the fact that middle-class Americans are heavily invested in the stock markets, which are back to where they were in September and falling farther. Since Trump was inaugurated, the percentage of workers who are worried about their job has shot from 30% to close to 80% to all who surveyed. The number of consumers worried that businesses might close has spiked to the highest level since records began in the middle of the 1980-1981 recession. People's confidence about where their income will be in a year has plummeted to the lowest net levels since 2009, right after the Great Crash. Worse still, the average American is now more worried about inflation than at any other time since the beginning of the pandemic, when prices shot up because of the shutdown in industry. This combination of a rapidly weakening economy and fear of inflation points to an old enemy not seen since the 70s, stagflation, where unemployment and inflation rise together. In such an environment, prices rise at the same time as incomes fall. The main trigger is the broad electorate's understanding that tariffs are a tax on spending that will raise the price of goods for working Americans. What is going on in corporate America, the part of the economy that was supposed to be boosted by Trump? Earnings are an important leading indicator as profits squeeze foreshadow layoffs and investment cuts. Corporate profits surged in 2021, but have now entered a slower growth phase. By the third quarter of 2024, U.S. profits fell 0.4% quarter on quarter, the first decline in years. By late 2024, year-on-year profit growth was 5.9%, down from the more than the 20% in 2023. This is a huge slowdown in margin. All while all the nonsense that is Trump's economic plan continues to be same-washed by many writers and commentators, as if there is some brilliant economic rabbit about to be pulled out of the hat by the sages of Mar-a-Lago. Declaring a trade war on your four biggest trading partners, Canada, Europe, China, and Mexico, would simply push up American prices, robbing U.S. consumers. Tariffs are a way of taking something away from somebody. Trade allows cheaper products to come in from abroad. Not sure it's always better, but okay, I'll go with it. Putting manners on local crony businesses. Tariffs protect second-rate local businesses, allowing them to sponge off consumers, flogging second-rate goods when punchers could be buying superior imported stuff. In the end, tariffs take from buyers and give money to yellow-back local sellers who can't compete in the international market. There's a reason that low tariffs, which have been reduced continuously in the past 50 years, corresponded to the greatest expansion of the global economy ever seen. Perfectionism is a sign of weakness, not strength. Americans are not being ripped off. In fact, they're being enriched by having access to better, cheaper, superior products made by more productive people. Rather than being the beginning of a great new era of American prowess, tariffs are a sign of insecurity and fear, marking the end of the great American century that began after the end of the First World War. The fascinating thing is that the average Joe six-pack American appreciates this.
Wait. First of all, the average American ain't got no six-pack. They're a long way away from that. I'm just saying. As a person with a keg, ain't no six-packs around here, dog. You know? But
otherwise, why is he so fearful about the future? Because I think people are fearful because
they have every right to be.
Not sure if he was being sarcastic toward the end.
Yeah, gotta be.
But regardless, people are going to be spending more. And I was sharing this with you in India before we went live. Look, if you're able to buy stuff in American, depending on what it is, it's not always cheap. If anything, it's more expensive.
Yeah.
Like, I have furniture in my house from a good company. It's made here, like custom made some of the items. You know, it took me several weeks to get the stuff because they make it, I wouldn't say in-house, but they produce them here. But they're probably my most expensive items I have in this apartment. So these are American-made products. So again, this is just furniture. But, you know, if I wanted cheaper, I could go to Amazon and get stuff more likely made in China or Taiwan.
Or Temu.
If I really wanted to. Right. Or Temu or IKEA. God forbid. But I'm older, so I'm not going to buy stuff from IKEA now. I'm not in my 20s. You know, but that's the point. It's the idea of like, there are not that many places where you're able to buy American unless if it's a small business. And even that for a small business, as I said earlier, depending on what kind of small business it is, a lot of your resources or your outsourcing products that you might have to buy outside of the US. So as a result, you're going to have to increase your prices in order to meet the demand. Case in point, as I said earlier, with the clothing store that I buy from online, because their products are produced in China. So it's not looking good, y'all.
Well, it's like, as a person who tries to buy exercise equipment for himself to lose the ridiculous amount of weight I have, you know, a standard power rack. Collin, you go to the gym, 4 bits of uprights, right? You know, 2x3 inch steel or 3x3 if you're feeling bougie, right? You know, how much you think one of those costs, Care Bear, from the budget company that gets China steel from China? About $500. You know, so.
And now with the tariffs, it's what?
Oh, it's gonna be more than that. I'm worried about it because that should be pricey, dog. Already, you know.
Right.
So cheapest set of adjustable dumbbells now that are worth buying are like fucking $1,500, dude. It's crazy, craziness. And a gym membership gonna cost more because of it, I'm sure. So
probably.
Good luck with that too, you know. But and as well as healthy food. Remember I talked about all that produce that like doesn't grow here during times of the year, you know. Or if you get a famine or a crop failure, which we've already talked about, go back to River of Melted Butter. All right, go all the way back to that, dude. Collin laughs. He thinks I'm joking, bro. We predicted a lot of this shit. How long ago, dog? Like, we talked about the bird flu. We talked about the fucking cow death. We talked about, you know, all that shit fucking up around here. You know, floods, plagues, crickets. right? Frogs, bullfrogs raining from the sky, Care Bear. You know, you're going to have to start throwing those serpent sticks, dog, for people to listen. I'm telling you right now, you better get out there, Moises. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, talking about this stuff is almost certainly why we're demonetized. So if you would like to support us and like to tell YouTube to fuck off, you can go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork, scan that QR code on your screen, or as always, it's in the doobly-doo. We appreciate any bit of monetary support. We promise not to put tariffs on it, and we'll use it wisely. But otherwise, like and subscribe, hit the share button, leave a comment. What are you worried about getting more expensive now? Do you think the recession is here yet? So otherwise, thanks for watching. Did that mention civil forfeiture by chance? Not civil forfeiture.
No.
It. I always get these confused. This is my brain works. I got neurons locked that shouldn't be. Quantitative easing. I see. I took me a minute. Right? You know about this, right? So this is old school knowledge, you know, where they installed it after that Obama recession, right? So the whole thing that they did to save that was they bailed out the banks, right? Remember that? So you remember, people in chat remember, you bail out the banks with a ton of money, right? Suddenly everyone's got money again, right? So that's how they dealt with that. And then to keep that from happening again, Care Bear, they put quantitative easing in place, and they give banks free billions of dollars. They just print the money and give it to them. So, you know, they just make it up. They just money printer go burr, essentially, right. every year.
Yes.
So that's still been happening. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that probably wouldn't be about to crash. And right when we're about to start a ton of wars over resources and basic minerals and, you know, all that stuff. Going to be great. The Great Water Wars coming soon, you know. And then when the ice caps melt, we can actually have water world. That'll be the best bit. I hope you got your scram ready. People, some movie fan is like, oh, dude, he mentioned the scram. Yeah, dog, I remember. You can buy a scram can. You can get that shit. Look it up. You can buy one. You ever watch Waterworld, Collin, or is it just me? Am I the only one? What's that? Kevin Costner? Kevin Costner in Waterworld?
Didn't that movie suck?
Yeah, I mean, give or take. I'm sure nostalgia is
mid.
A wonderful drug. Oh no, It's probably terrible. It's definitely like Desert Mantis, what's a scram? You've seen scram in more than one movie. You know, I believe it's also in Mad Max. So this is scram's like it's like the little Spam. It's like their version of Spam in the movies. I think they also put it in Fallout, like as a joke. It's like a visual gag. You know. But you know about Greeking, right? You ever heard that term? So yeah, it's a movie thing / TV thing, right? You need to have a product in your film that is clearly what it is to most people at a glance, right? But you don't want to have to pay copyright for like Coca-Cola, so you use like Coca-Schmola, right? Like that's called Greeking. So yeah, there's like an entire industry, something printing house over in California has like been doing all that stuff for years, all the money and bail bonds you've ever seen and cereal boxes you've seen. Like every time you do a supermarket in any movie, you'll see that stuff up on the walls, you know? So, but yeah, because of that, there's like classic ones that come up again in films, and you'll start to look out for them. You'll be like, oh, they got the scram, that shit's in there again, dog. It's like a Wilhelm scream, but visual. It's very fun, Like there's a newspaper that's used all the time. Kameshwari Kate, I never realized Reef had a kegger and not a six-packer. I have an appreciation for kegger dudes. Hey, appreciate the appreciation. Shit, we don't get much of that. So, see, the thing is that you have a six-pack underneath. That's the problem. You just have to chisel out the marble around it. Isn't that how art works? It's I've got the body of a Greek god, that god being Bacchus. No? Just me? Don't worry, Thor looks like this too, bro. We're out here. God body and shit. Got a lot of soul, the Buddha belly. See, it's just make a statue out of me. I look good. That's all I'm saying. What do we got next week, Collin?
So I think basically it's pretty much the same. Ignore the dates. Certain things will not. Well, we need just a general one, honestly. But
we kind of have one in this. So,
but yeah, Monday through Thursday at 10. All times are Eastern Standard Time. Simulcast of AM Wake Up on X or Twitter. Indie might pop on depending on the show. So you might want to check him out there. Friday at 10 will be the Independent Review, also on X. That's also at 10. Angel in the Afternoon on Friday at 7 p.m., followed by American Tradition Replay at 10:30. Saturday, Baby, Pro Wrestling Talk with Angel and Witchy Perfect on the Ocho. Not sure if Angel's going live on Sunday. I think he's taking a break, I believe. But Sunday at 10. Oh no, are you guys going live on Sunday? I don't think so.
This Sunday, I do believe, but
this Sunday, I think the following Sunday you're not.
Next Sunday, Indy will be traveling, so
yeah, he'll be traveling. So so next Sunday, so this Sunday though, How Do You Miss That, followed by Boats.
He's I think he's going to I think he planned on doing spring break. I think that was his plan.
Florida,
go do like MTV spring break. They're bringing that back just for him.
Well, that's too late now.
What's that East Coast Florida spot? That everyone does for that or used to, Now I can't remember.
Panama City.
Brain broke it. That's Gulf Coast. So
I don't know.
Pretty sure.
I always think Panama City for spring break in Florida for some reason. So,
yeah, there's another one. Someone in chat will know.
That's not in the chat,
So.
But I'm a little far removed from that spring break life anyway, so I don't remember and don't care to know.
What, you did the phone parties? You remember? God.
I never did, actually. I never did. I was too broke. No, I never did. I never did.
I was brokey.
I was too broke. I was either too broke or I did other stuff. Like
Daytona, I was thinking of.
Okay, yeah. Daytona.
So, Creed comes out and then Carmen Electra does some dancing.
I never did the MTV spring, although I wanted to, but I too broke. So
two broke girls.
Plus, I got mono my freshman year and I didn't go anywhere. So during spring break, so
got
I
the
was
kissing disease out there. You know?
So
Yeah.
I had it. Yeah, I had it so bad they thought that I had meningitis. Like it was that bad. So, but to the point where I had to go into hospital for like over a week because I was so dehydrated and just so bad. So, but yeah, that was my freshman year in college. Just but anyway, we'll be back next Wednesday at 9 as usual. So
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Also, if you guys, well, it's a little late, but like if you're watching this after the fact, let us know in the chat. Who would you like us to interview? We're working on a couple of interviews. Because I'm going to be
look forward to the 16th.
Potentially, we'll see.
Allegedly.
But I'm going to be in and out over the next few weeks. So we're trying to figure out who we can have on for interviews that we can pre-record or have live, depending. So
yeah,
definitely let us know who you would like us to have on. We
Please,
haven't had
Fee, come on.
We haven't had that many people on this year, if at all. But we're looking to change that. So yeah, let us know who you like us to interview, and especially for some of them, if you have any access to them, send us their information so we can connect with them. Solid Moon said Whitney Webb. We've tried. We're trying.
Working on it.
She's
Bad
hard.
Cookies, Claire Daly.
Also hard.
Yep.
So
I wanted to do Alon Mizrahi as well. That'd be a good one. So we're still looking for non-Zionist rabbis. That would be some good interviews as well. So
Bad Cookie said, I spent my spring break correcting third grade homework assignments as a TA. No.
Accurate.
No, because I wouldn't have been. No, I would have been off. I wouldn't have been doing my interns at that point anyway. So no. Out of college, yeah. But not definitely when I was in college. Solid Moon said Richie Medhurst. That'll be very difficult considering his situation right now. Because I think for his safety, he can't do any interviews. But
Sam Husseini, I wanted to try to reach out to him too.
Yeah. Max Sajay said Donald Trump. No. No.
Yep.
No politicians here.
No, sir. That's the rule. We're sticking to it.
Yeah.
Worked out pretty well so far. So, but I think that's about it. So, cool. We'll see you next week, kids. But as always, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Bye, have a great time.